اعوذ بالله من الشیطان الرجیم بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, peace be upon our Prophet.
Madam Vice Chairman, honorable delegations, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for me to attend the 20th session of UPR Working Group to present the report of the Islamic Republic of Iran on recommendations made during the first review cycle in 2010. The Islamic Republic of Iran greatly values the UPR mechanism as a cooperative mechanism which considers human rights situation of all the UN member states on equal footing, avoiding selectivity and discrimination. The National Report of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is before you today, describes activities carried out by my country since the first review cycle. In preparing the report, several ministries, relevant commissions of the Islamic Consultative Assembly, I mean the Parliament, and the Judiciary of the Islamic Republic of Iran have been actively involved. High-ranking representatives from all sectors of the government are present in my delegation, who will be delivering their statements in the course of our meeting. Furthermore, representatives of civil society have been extensively consulted and their comments received due consideration in the process of report finalization. We have also taken note of questions forwarded to us in advance. My delegation will do its best to address all these questions and constructive recommendations that distinguished members and observers of the Council may put to us. As a state party to International Bill of Rights and the core human rights treaties, the Islamic Republic of Iran continues to fully participate in the international deliberations and activities for the promotion and protection of human rights. Iran furthermore maintains that achieving sublime goals of human rights requires mutual respect for different values, traditions, and cultures, as well as refraining from imposing specific lifestyle on others. To promote such lofty goals and aspirations, Iran has chosen to extend full cooperation and active engagement with the UPR mechanism. Madam President, within the 4-year time span since the submission of our first periodic review report, the Islamic Republic of Iran has constantly worked toward further promotion and protection of human rights, with a special emphasis on multicultural universalism. Toward that end, we have promulgated major policies, adopted new laws and regulations, and set up new mechanisms which have been referred to in detail in our national report. In the field of human rights education and capacity building, Iran carried out extensive activities such as incorporating human rights teaching in the public education programs, holding various courses on human rights issues and themes for judges, the staff of the judiciary, and prison aid workers, administrating special courses on human rights issues by Iran's High Council for Human Rights, and incorporating human rights education for police forces, families, and government civil servants. Madam President, The Islamic Republic of Iran, as a democratic state based on Islamic rationality, recognizes that the will of the people shall be the basis of justification of all decisions of the government. Since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran has constantly sought ways of genuinely and meaningfully involving its nationals without any discrimination of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, and religion in the governance of the state. Through holding 35 nationwide democratic elections, the presidential election of 2013 that enjoyed the participation of 72.8% of the nationals, the 9th parliamentary election in 2012 that attracted 64.2% of the ballot holders to the polls, and the 4th round of city and county councils that led to the election of more than 100 to 26,000 deputies from all over Iran are among free and fair elections held during the preceding 4 years. In the meantime, Iran has also provided ample opportunities for further promotion of NGOs, political parties and associations, as well as safeguarding the proper and uninterrupted stream of information, which will be explained by my colleagues in detail in the due time. Madam President, during the 4-year period since the submission of our UPR report, fundamental development have taken shape in realization of economic, social and cultural rights, such as the Global Health Scheme that addresses medical and health concerns of all nationals of Iran, development of extensive mother and child care plan, establishment of national health and medication network, administering the family doctor system, administration of the National Immunity Program. In the area of education, to enact the provisions of the Constitution for education for all. Almost 95% of the population in rural areas have now easy access to free educational services. According to the UNESCO Education for All Monitoring Report of 2012, Iran now stands with the first 6 states known for having provided gender equality in education. Iran feels obliged to create and maintain necessary measures for the protection of the rights of the vulnerable groups. Among a wide range of initiatives adopted for the promotion and protection of the rights of these groups in recent years, allow me just to make a specific reference to extensive women protection scheme, in particular that embraces programs such as development of family protection law of the 2013, setting up Vice Presidency Bureau for Women and Family Affairs, and establishing the Women Consultancy Offices in public administration. They are also exclusively supported by the Women Employment Fund, the Women Entrepreneurship and Self-Employment Grant Scheme. Augmenting support in the meantime is extended to women to protect them against violence and abuse. As regards the protection and promotion of rights of the child, Iran has developed and enhanced and enacted numerous modalities and protective instruments, namely establishing the national focal point on the Convention of the Rights of the Child in 2012, development of the Child and Adolescent National Statute in 2014, approving and enacting the law on the protection of the rights of the family in 2014, as well as signing the optional protocol to the Convention of the Rights of the Child and on the involvement of the children in armed conflict in 2011. Madam President, all of these progresses and development happened during the 4 years of the UPR review toward the second cycle of UPR. Madam President, independence of judiciary in the Islamic Republic of Iran stems from the constitutional notion of the separation of powers, whereby the executive, legislature, and judiciary form 3 separate branches of the government which can constitute a system of checks and balances aimed at preventing abuses of power. This separation and consequent independence is key to the effective functioning of the judiciary and upholding the rule of law. All nationals of Iran are equal before the law and have the right to choose their own lawyers. Among other things, the principle of presumption of innocence, prohibition of any form of torture, court transparency, impartiality of judges, the principle of legality, the principle of compensation of liability for faulty judgment, the principle of separation of political and press offenses from ordinary crimes, to give them due justice process, and the principle of prohibition of arbitrary arrest are distinctive features of our judiciary. To further strengthen its role in securing proper administration of the law and ensuring its genuine independence, the judiciary has adopted a wide series of activities such as the following: constant and regulated supervision over the courts and other organizations affiliated to the judiciary, further strengthening the legal and judicial deputy offices of the judiciary, establishment of the Deputy Office for Strategic Planning to ensure closer coordination and constant monitoring of the functions and the good governance of the judiciary organs, establishment of the Deputy Office for Prevention of Crime, establishment of Deputy Office for Cultural Affairs to promote the culture of respect of the law in the society. Madam President, fortunately, the Deputy of Justice who is in charge of this office, I have the honor to be just sitting next to me, Professor Dr. Sadeghi, that he will contribute to this deliberation in the due time. Establishment of Deputy Office for Information, Technology and Communication to ensure easy and rapid access of the nationals of Iran to judiciary organs through Internet and promote what is so-called the e-justice. Increasing specialized training courses for judges, setting up free telephone-operated legal aid consultancy centers. It is worth recalling that the concept of due process of law has been particularly reiterated in the Constitution, the Penal Proceeding Act, and other ordinary laws, and call for the right to recourse and fair processing of the legal cases all along the judicial process, irrespective of race, religion, gender, ethnicity, and other attributes of nationals. Madam President, the Islamic Republic of Iran has continuously worked for further promotion of human rights through adopting a constructive and collaborative approach with respective mechanisms. We have faced with challenges along the way as well. We continue to maintain that the appointment of a special rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Iran is the fruit of a political, selective, and unjust process that clearly contradicts basic values for the promotion of human rights. Moreover, imposition of sanctions and unilateral coercive measures against our citizens has created various obstacles in the way of their fully enjoyment of human rights, in particular their economic, social, and cultural rights. Economic coercive measures as an instrument of adversarial policy run contrary to the letter and spirit of human rights instruments. Like sanctions, terrorism is a flagrant contempt for human dignity and a great threat to international peace and security. As a country that has fallen victim to this most brutal violation of human rights, namely the rights to life, Iran adheres to the renouncement of all forms of violence and calls for more concerted international efforts for combating all forms of terrorism and extremism. Within the last few years, a group of our most brilliant scientists and academicians fell prey to scandalous terrorist activities organized by the most notorious aliens. Based on undisputable facts and evidences, the MKO, a notorious terrorist group, cult ringleaders, and their death squads are behind the indiscriminate assassination of more than 17,000 innocent nationals of Iran from all walks of life during the past 34 years. Madam President, apart from terrorism, drug trade and related activities continue to undermine the legitimate economies and threaten the stability, security, and sovereignty of the states and the dignity of their objects. Despite all odds, Iran therefore continues to fully comply with its international and moral obligation by extending full and frank cooperation to UN machinery and other interested states on the international campaign against drugs. According to UN Office on Drug and Crime, Iran is netting 8 times more opium and 3 times more heroin than all other countries in the world combined. It is worth recalling that the country's war on drug trafficking, which I call it drug terrorism, has also called the lives of nearly 4,000 Iranian brave border guards and security forces over the past 34 years. On the other hand, Iran has constantly provided the sanctuary to more than 4 million refugees from the neighboring countries. Recalling the imposition of the most recent unjustified and unfair sanctions on innocent people of Iran and their ensuing hardship, they most graciously chose to continue to host the homeless refugees with open arms and hearts. The international principle of burden sharing, in the meantime, calls on the international society and the UN member states to discharge their ethical and moral obligations toward refugees residing in Iran in the context of UNHCR cooperation programs and their voluntary support. Madam President, as in the past, Iran continues to fully participate in the international deliberation and actively engage in activities for the promotion of human rights. Madam President, Islamic Republic of Iran has a solid commitment to the principles of multicultural universality in the domain of human rights. And with our colleagues, I mean member states of non-aligned movement, already significant progress is made. Though there is a long way to go, I should add, among other things, Iran has continually extended its full cooperation to UN human rights mechanism and has spared no collaborative efforts in dealing with the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Madam President, I think it's a proper time that I stop at this point my deliberation, and after honorable member states they took the place and expressed their views, then please permit me that some of my delegation to continue the deliberation. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, Excellency, for your statement and for your presence here with us this morning. Before giving the floor to delegations for their questions and comments, I would like to remind you to respect the established speaking time of 1 minute and 5 seconds in order to accommodate all inscribed speakers. The first speaker on my list is South Africa. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. South Africa welcomes the delegation of Iran led by His Excellency Dr. Laranjani in the presentation of the country's national report. We recognize the pivotal and influential role Iran plays in its region as well as internationally, including establishment of the NAM Center for Human Rights and Cultural Diversity. We also appreciate the national effort to embrace diversity and commend the strides made by Iran in the advancement of socio-economic rights, particularly in the field of education and health, and encourage further progress in this regard. South Africa recommends the following: that Iran strengthen measures to promote women and economic and political participation in the country, congratulates Iran on the appointment of Special Assistant for Ethnic Group and Religious Minorities, and recommends that Iran strengthens measures aimed at protecting of religious minorities in accordance with Article 13 and 14 of its Constitution. Finally, we welcome progress in the establishment of the National Human Rights Institution and recommends that Iran proceed with the bill of its establishment. We wish the delegation of Iran a very successful review. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Spain.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. Spain extends a cordial welcome to the delegation of Iran, and we thank them for taking part in this exercise. We commend the commitments that the Iranian government has undertaken with the future approval of the Charter of Citizens' Rights. We recognize that drug trafficking is a challenge for the country. However, we don't believe these crimes are of the utmost seriousness pursuant to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. We therefore recommend that Iran reforms the criminal code, excluding drug trafficking crimes, and not punish them with the death penalty. Spain notes that there are fewer numbers of underage individuals being executed. However, we recommend that the death penalty not be applied to persons who are underage at the moment they committed the crime. Iranian legislation currently criminalizes same-sex consensual relations, including imposing the death penalty on them. Spain recommends that Iran exempts these provisions from its criminal code for same-sex consensual relationships. The application of cruel corporal punishments such as flagellation, amputation and stoning are customary in Iran. Spain recommends that there be ratification and signing of the Convention Against Torture, therefore. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Thailand.
Madam Vice President, Thailand commends the efforts of the government of Iran to improve the human rights situation in the country. In particular, the ongoing drafting of the Charter of Citizens' Rights in an inclusive manner, the drafting of a bill to establish a human rights institution, the implementation of the health insurance and health system reform plan to improve access to health care, as well as work done on refugee protection in cooperation with international partners. Thailand also welcomes the progress made in the promotion and protection of the rights of vulnerable groups, especially women and children. We are pleased to learn that the government of Iran has established a national focal point for the CRC, as is in the process of drafting the comprehensive plan for the promotion of women and family issues. While we hope that all these positive efforts will continue, we recommend Iran to step up its efforts to ensure equal treatment of women and girls, particularly by ratifying the Convention to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women. Permit me to conclude by expressing Thailand's readiness to share with Iran our experiences in providing universal health coverage, which would promote the right to health in the country. I thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, Ambassador. The next speaker is Egypt.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. My delegation welcomes the delegation of Iran presided by His Excellency Dr. Mohammad Larijani, the Secretary General of the High Council for Human Rights. We take positive note of the efforts exerted by the government of Iran to implement the accepted recommendations of the last UPR. Among the important institutional reforms that can be highlighted in this regard are the enactment of the organization law of the Administrative Justice Court and the establishment of the Office of the Vice President for Women and Family Affairs and the designation of a national focal point for the Convention on the Right of the Child. We are encouraged also by the progress achieved by Iran on a handful of MDGs. In conclusion, we recommend the following for the kind consideration of the government of Iran. 1, to continue to strengthen its national human rights mechanisms, including through finalizing the process aimed at ensuring the conformity of the national human rights institution with the Paris Principles. 2, to consider the possibility of acceding to the International Convention on the Rights of Migrant Workers. 3, to strengthen the efforts to allow greater role for women in social and economic development. 4, to continue the national efforts in the area of social inclusion of persons with disabilities. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Sudan.
Thank you, Madam President. The delegation of Sudan warmly welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran headed by His Excellency Dr. Larijani and thanks the esteemed delegation for the informative report. The commitment and positive engagement of Iran to the UPR process is highly appreciated, and the information provided in the national report regarding the implementation of the accepted recommendation presented to Iran in the Paris cycle is very encouraging. In spite of the unjust economic sanction imposed on Iran managed to fulfill its obligation concerning the implementation of many recommendations regarding education, capacity building, promotion of economic and social cultural rights, and the protection of human rights, especially for women and children, and other recommendations. Mr. President, Sudan would like to recommend the Islamic Republic of Iran the following: to continue its effort for the establishment of the National Human Rights Institution, to continue defending the rights of its people, to address the challenges imposed by the economic sanctions. And thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Sweden.
Madam President, Sweden wishes to welcome the Iranian delegation and Dr. Larijani. Sweden welcomes the pledge of President Rouhani for less media censorship, less internet filtering, less of a security-oriented atmosphere in society. However, the human rights situation in Iran still remains serious. Sweden recommends Iran, 1, to take measures to ensure non-discrimination in law and in practice against ethnic and religious minorities, including arbitrary detention and exclusion from higher education and government employment, as well as governmental interference in private employment against persons belonging to the Baha'i community. 2, to end its severe restrictions and surveillance of the Internet, hence guaranteeing free, unrestricted access for all its citizens to Internet and social media. 3, to seize its censorship of the media as well as the harassment and arbitrary detention of journalists and to provide guarantees for the rights to freedom of expression and the freedom of the media. 4, to give immediate and unfettered access to the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation for human rights in Iran. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Switzerland.
Thank you, Madam President. Switzerland welcomes the delegation of Iran and thanks it for the presentation of its second national report. Switzerland is very concerned at the growing application of death penalty in Iran and deplores the presumed violations of the right to a fair trial in several cases, including the recent case of Ms. Rania Jabari. While recalling that it is the responsibility of the government of Iran to prevent executions, Switzerland recommends to the government of Iran that it examines the case of all detainees condemned to death with a view to commuting their sentence and respecting their right to challenge the legality of the detention before a court under international law. The right to freedom of expression, association and peaceful assembly is a priority in Swiss human rights policy. Switzerland recommends the government of Iran to immediately and unconditionally free all persons detained for having peacefully exercised these rights. Thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to the Syrian Arab Republic.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I warmly welcome His Excellency Dr. Larijani and his delegation and thank them for the very informative introductory statement and national report prepared through a comprehensive consultative process. We commend the Islamic Republic's efforts since the first cycle of the UPR, particularly steps taken to improve existing legal framework and adoption of new laws and regulations. We share the view that international approach to human rights should take into account national particularities, conditions and cultural background, and be based on dialogue and cooperation rather than confrontation, politicization and double standards which lead to the adoption of politically motivated resolutions in different UN fora. We underline the important challenges referred to in Iran's national report, particularly those related to terrorism and unilateral economic measures. We recommend to the Islamic Republic of Iran, 1, to continue efforts to highlight the negative repercussions of both terrorism and unilateral coercive measures on national development plans and on the enjoyment of basic human rights of its citizens. Thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Tajikistan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tajikistan welcomes Iran's willingness to cooperate in human rights activities. We positively evaluate the measures taken for the conservation of historical and cultural heritage of the country. Moreover, we acknowledge the efforts of the government of Iran to combat terrorism and drug trafficking. We would like to recommend the following: to pay special attention to the social and economic integration of the population in rural regions of the country through development of the infrastructure and change of regulatory framework in all spheres of life sustenance, to facilitate social exclusion of women, to prevent violence against women and children, as well as discrimination based on sex and social status, by improving domestic mechanisms and the adoption of legislative measures for the social integration of the women. To continue to work on the creation of national legal framework for the protection of minorities, including immigrants and refugees, thus protection from violence and appropriate treatment within society. Thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Sri Lanka.
Madam Vice President, Sri Lanka welcomes the high-level delegation from the Islamic Republic of Iran and thanks them for the update. Sri Lanka is encouraged by Iran's progress on the establishment of the National Human Rights Institution and the implementation of the National Strategic Action Plan on Human Rights. Sri Lanka condemns the use of unilateral actions against countries to impose policy change. Such action has led to hindering the enjoyment of economic, cultural and social rights, in particular the right to development of the people in targeted countries. We note with the resilience exercised by Iran in the wake of such serious challenges and its unwavering determination to fight terrorism and narcotics. My delegation recommends that Iran, 1, continue efforts in order to increase participation of women in political, public and professional spheres. 2, continue its national policy to promote equal opportunities and treatment with respect of employment. 3, continue to allocate more resources in the areas of sport for all youth. And 4, continue its efforts to provide development and humanitarian aid at least to developing countries. Finally, we wish Iran all success in its UPR engagement.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Republic of Macedonia welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran and thanks them for the presentation of their national report. We appreciate their commitment to the UPR process. We express our deep concern regarding the overall situation of human rights in Iran. We are gravely concerned at the increasing number of executions. We strongly condemn the recent execution of Ms. Rekhani Jabari. We express our deepest condolences to her family. We are deeply troubled by the continuing practice of prisoning human rights activists, lawyers, journalists, and we urge the Iranian authorities to release all political prisoners unconditionally. The authorities have failed to address violence against women and girls, which remains endemic. Full text of the statement will be posted on the Human Rights Extranet, and I would like to make the following recommendation to Iran. To urgently establish a moratorium on the use of death penalty. We recommend to the government to ratify CEDAW and CAT,
We recommend to Iran to make all efforts to guarantee and protect the rights and freedoms enshrined in the international instruments the country is a party to. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Tunisia.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. My delegation should like to welcome the delegation of Iran and places great attention to the importance given by this country to the UPR process. We have taken note with the measures taken by Iran in order to implement the recommendations that came out of the first UPR cycle, such as public policies, the amendment of the Penal Code and Penal Procedure Code, as well as other resolutions aimed at the promotion and protection of human rights. We have also taken note of the drafting of Human Rights Charter, and we hope that this will be compatible with human rights international principles. We encourage Iran to continue its efforts in order to strengthen the legal framework and to adhere and recommend it to ratify SAT and its optional protocol, as well as CEDAW and the Rome Statute. We also encourage Iran and commend it for the establishment of an NHRI, and we also notice that Iran has made a lot in order to improve the freedoms and the freedom of association, established societies, and we wish to Iran every success and progress. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Turkmenistan.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Turkmenistan warmly welcomes the high-level delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran, led by His Excellency Dr. Mohammad Javad Larijani. We welcome the efforts undertaken by the government of Iran to strengthen its legislative, institutional and policy mechanisms for the protection and promotion of human rights. It's commendable that within implementation of the Children's Nutrition Program, the government of Iran has achieved improvement in children's nutrition by 40%, and the number of nutrition counseling centers has increased from the original 80 in 2009 to 150 centers in 2013. Turkmenistan commends the government of Iran for having taken various measures within its National Development Plan to expand the health services in the rural areas, in particular construction of 18,000 rural health clinics and 2,500 treatment centers. Further, we recommend 1. Enhance its efforts to strengthen women's participation in politics and public service. 2. Step up efforts to provide greater access to education and health. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you and welcome. The UK recommends 1. that Iran issues an immediate moratorium on the use of the death penalty for juveniles and for crimes that do not meet the most serious crime standards under international law. 2. That Iran allows all prisoners access to legal counsel during all phases of pre-trial detention and the investigative stages of cases, and allows for legal counsel to advise the accused during these proceedings. The UK opposes the death penalty in all circumstances and is deeply concerned by the sharp increase in executions in Iran over the past year. We note with concern continued widespread discrimination against minority religious groups, particularly the Baha'is and the Christians, and the reported harassment, interrogation and detention of journalists and human rights defenders. We remain concerned by prison conditions and the treatment of detainees in Iran, including reports of prolonged periods of solitary confinement, forced confessions and physical abuse. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, Ambassador, and I give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The United States welcomes the delegation of Iran. We recommend that Iran, 1, end the harassment and prosecution of journalists and release detained Washington Post reporter Jason Rezaian to demonstrate its commitment to freedom of expression. 2, uphold its religious freedom obligations and release those imprisoned for their religious belief, such as Pastor Saeed Abedini, and protect the rights of all individuals to manifest their religious beliefs. 3, invite the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Iran to visit the country and provide him with access to appropriate officials, facilities, and prisoners. We are deeply concerned about the violations of freedom of religion and freedom of expression in Iran. There are continued reports of government harassment towards members of religious minorities. Journalists have been arrested, detained, or prevented from doing their work. Access to the internet also has been curtailed. We are disappointed that Iran refuses to cooperate with the Special Rapporteur and has denied the PIN permission to visit the country. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, Ambassador. I give the floor to Uruguay.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. Uruguay welcomes the delegation for Iran. We thank them for the presentation of the national report, which contains substantive information on the implementation of the first UPR recommendations. We welcome the establishment of the National Coordination Centre for the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which aims to promote and protect the rights of the child. And we'd like to receive information on how it works and if it has a mandate to ensure that domestic legislation is pursuant to the Convention. When it comes to international human rights instruments, Uruguay respectfully recommends that Iran ratify the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the Convention Against Torture and its optional protocol, and the Convention Against Enforced Disappearances. Uruguay also respectfully recommends the following: that efforts be stepped up to ensure that women and girls are treated in the same way as men and boys, that national legislation be amended when it discriminates against on the grounds of gender, religion, political views or sexual orientation, and that there be a moratorium against the death penalty as an initial step towards its total abolition. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan. The delegation is not in the room, so I call on Venezuela.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We greet the distinguished delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran and thank them for the presentation of their report. The imposition of unilateral sanctions runs contrary to international law, and it is an attack against the basic rights of the Iranian people. We recognize that Iran has made significant progress in implementing the recommendations of the UPR. The country has also met the majority of its Millennium Development Goals before 2015. We recommend that the government continue broadening its successful human rights awareness raising programs, that it continue measures to improve the status of women in society, that it continue strengthening cooperation between the states and civil society organizations working on human rights and education, and that it continue efforts for persons with disability meeting their special needs, particularly of education and health. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Vietnam.
Madam la President, Vietnam would like to warmly welcome the delegation of Islamic Republic of Iran to the second cycle of UPR and thank them for a comprehensive report as well as the presentation before the working groups today. Vietnam take note that the government of Iran has been making efforts since its birth. UPR cycle in 2010 is protection and promotion of fundamental rights and freedoms, especially the enactment of new laws and policies, the establishment of new mechanisms on protection of rights of children, rights and status of women, assistance to ethnic and religious minority, monitoring department on court activities. In this regard, Vietnam welcomes the adoption of the fifth development plan, Zero Health Population Policy, which will contribute to the increase of economic development, healthcare and services in rural population and to improve country's performances in other areas. Madam President, I thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Yemen.
Thank you, Madam President, we would like to welcome Dr. Mohammad Gawad Laregani, the Secretary General of the High Council for Human Rights and Head of Delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran. We greatly appreciate the detailed presentation made in which he reviewed the developments in the field of human rights, including the enactment of a number of laws which strengthen human rights, such as the Penal Penal Code, the Code of Criminal Procedure, as well as the Procedural and Organizational Act regarding the Administrative Court and the Protection of Children and Adolescent Act, all in full compliance with Iran's obligations in the field of human rights. We greatly appreciate the efforts made by the sister country of Iran, and we recommend that it continue its efforts to implement the comprehensive program to protect the rights of women and ensure their empowerment. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Iran's commitment to the promotion and protection of human rights is evident from measures outlined in its report, and these include, among others, the drafting of the Charter of Citizens' Rights, inclusion of issues such as citizens' rights, humanitarian obligations and rights, minority rights, family rights, and environmental rights in the school curricula and new textbooks. The organization of human rights training courses for government officials, judges, and other judicial officials, as well as police and prison officers. The country has taken steps to fulfill its international obligations, including by joining the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2009 and signing the optional protocol of people on the involvement of children in armed conflict in 2010. We recommend that Iran accelerates the exercise to finalize the Charter of Citizens' Rights in order to enhance its human rights institutional framework. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Afghanistan.
Madam President, Afghanistan welcomes the distinguished delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the 20th sessions of the UPR Working Group and wishes to thank His Excellency Dr. Mohammad Jawad Larjani for the presentation of their national report this morning. We commend the efforts taken so far by the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran with the implementation of recommendation it received during the first cycle of UPR in 2010. We take positive note of the steps taken by the Islamic Republic of Iran for the promotion and protection of human rights in the country. Afghanistan shares a long history of peaceful and friendly relations with the Islamic Republic of Iran. For decades, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been host to a large number of Afghan refugees. The plight of Afghan refugees across the globe and the efforts of the international community and our neighboring countries, including Iran, to find a durable solution are of paramount importance to the government of Afghanistan. In light of that importance, we would like to reiterate our appreciation of support by the Islamic Republic of Iran in hosting Afghan refugees, and in that context, we commend the measures taken to protect refugee rights are in compliance with the internationally recognized norms and standards. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Algeria.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President. We would like to welcome the presence amongst us of the delegation of Iran, led by His Excellency Dr. Larjani, and thank it for his introduction to the national report of his country. We welcome the numerous initiatives to strengthen laws, standards, and mechanisms for the promotion and protection of human rights that have taken place over these past years. We welcome the adoption of a law on criminal procedure, the establishment of the post of Vice Chairperson on Women and the Family, the appointment of a focal point for the Convention on the Rights of the Child. A number of procedures and mechanisms have been established to promote economic, social, and cultural rights. Thus, Iran has included the MDGs in different development plans in the area of health, education, and social services. My delegation would like to make the following recommendations. Continue efforts to promote and protect the rights of women and children. Take appropriate measures to develop a social environment that is favorable to the autonomous functioning of civil society. And finally, we wish the best of success to Iran in implementing the recommendations that it will accept. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Angola.
Mr. President, the delegation of Angola wishes to welcome the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran and congratulates it on its report. We welcome the law on the protection of children and
adolescents that are deprived of parental care or victims of negligence. We welcome the progress achieved by Iran in the areas of health, education, and the rights of children. On this topic, we would like to recommend to the Islamic Republic of Iran the following. First of all, that it step up efforts in institutional and legislative development, that it strengthen mechanisms to advance women, and that women be included in decision-making processes. Third, that it increase cooperation with civil society and NGOs in the human rights area. And finally, we wish the best of success to the Islamic Republic of Iran in the UPR review. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Argentina.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. The delegation of Argentina wishes to welcome the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran and thank them for the presentation of their national report. We continue to be concerned at the human rights situation in Iran, which was expressed in Resolution 2524 adopted by this Council. The delegation respectfully recommends that Iran take necessary measures to improve international legal cooperation in cases of serious human rights violations and guarantee the right to truth and justice. The delegation also has expressed its concern at the discrimination against certain minorities, such as non-Islamic religious communities and the LGBTI community. My country recommends that the authorities of Iran strengthen existing provisions to promote equality of the above group and amend or provide exemptions to those laws which allow for their persecution or punishment. Argentina recommends that Iran consider establishing a formal moratorium on those who are condemned to death and consider the possibility of abolishing the death penalty. Thank you very much.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Armenia.
La vice-présidente.
Madam Vice President, I would like to welcome His Excellency Mr. Larijani and his delegation and thank them for the presentation of their second national report. We welcome measures taken by Iran to promote human rights since the first UPR cycle, especially to promote the right to health and the rights of the child. Armenia attaches great importance to the promotion of the rights of national, ethnic, linguistic, and religious minorities and the protection of their cultural heritage. We appreciate greatly the fact that the Armenian minority in Iran freely exercises its cultural and religious rights. Armenia also appreciates the initiatives taken by Iran to extend the cooperation on the intercultural and religious sphere, as well as the dialogue in that area. And we welcome the organization of this cycle of dialogue between Islam and the Armenian Christian Church in Iran. We welcome measures taken to promote education for human rights and its inclusion in school curricula, including topics such as the rights of citizens, humanitarian rights, the rights of minorities, and environmental rights. Recommendations. Promote initiatives to promote dialogue, cooperation, and tolerance between cultures and religions. Continue to promote human rights education and training programs. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Australia.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Australia welcomes President Rouhani's positive statements on freedom of expression and non-discrimination and urges Iran to implement these commitments. Australia recommends Iran establish a formal moratorium on the death penalty and in particular cease all planned execution of juvenile offenders and prohibit the imposition of the death penalty for crimes committed by minors. Australia recommends Iran guarantee the right to legitimate freedom of expression, association and assembly and release political prisoners, including activists, lawyers and journalists detained for solely exercising these rights. Australia recommends Iran cease all discrimination against members of religious and ethnic minorities, including Baha'i, Dervishes, Christians, Awazi Arabs, Baloch and Kurds, and ensure respect for freedom of religion. Australia recommends Iran cooperate fully with the UN human rights mechanisms, including by inviting the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Iran to the country. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Austria.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Austria warmly welcomes the delegation of Iran to the UPR and thanks for the submission of their report. Regarding the protection of minorities, we welcome President Rouhani's statement that all ethnicities or religions, even religious minorities, must feel justice. We look to the government to swiftly put this commitment into practice. Austria also commends the commitment expressed by the Iranian government to investigate and bring to justice the perpetrators of recent acid attacks against women in Iran and hopes for swift results. Iranian law outlaws torture. However, reports of torture, ill treatment and deaths in custody often remain without investigation and perpetrators are not brought to account. Austria is also deeply worried by the increasing number of executions in Iran and the many juvenile offenders that reportedly remain on death row. Austria encourages swifter and substantive progress towards better human rights protection in Iran and would like to make the following recommendations. 1. End discrimination in law and practice against all religious and ethnic minorities, such as Baha'i, Sufi, Kurds and Sunni Arabs, and ensure full protection of their rights. 2. Establish an official moratorium on executions, in particular executions of juvenile offenders who were under the age of 18 at the time of the alleged crime, with a view to reviewing all cases of juvenile prisoners on death row. 3. Ratify the Convention Against Torture as soon as possible. 4. Ensure equal rights and opportunities for women and girls. I thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Bahrain.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. في البداية
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Allow me first and foremost to welcome the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is a high-level delegation, and we thank it for the presentation which it has just made. Madam Vice President, we appreciate the efforts made by Iran to implement the recommendations accepted during the first UPR cycle. However, we are still concerned given reports of the situation of ethnic and religious minorities, all the more so since the Secretary General has stated that no progress has been made in this area. These minorities continue to be subjected to severe restrictions in exercising their cultural and political rights. We would make a few recommendations. First of all, that Iran take all measures necessary to protect these minorities from all forms of discrimination. Secondly, that it guarantee the full enjoyment by these minorities of all their social, cultural, and political rights, especially their right to education. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Bangladesh.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Given its history of rich civilization, culture and tradition, it's expected that Iran would naturally uphold traditional social values, which is manifested in the government's efforts to promote and protect human rights while striving to meet socio-economic aspirations of its people. We have noted with satisfaction that the country is on track to achieve most of the Millennium Development Goals, notably Goal 1, Goal 2, Goal 4 and Goal 5. We also welcome the move to appoint women in senior government positions, as well as the establishment of the Office of Vice President for Women and Family Affairs. These significant steps are testimony to effective government policies and programs. Madam Vice President, although the main components of human development had improved significantly in economic terms in Iran, the country still faced challenges like most other developing countries. CESCR expressed concern about the high level of poverty in some regions, despite the macroeconomic achievements of Iran, and about high dropout rates of girls from schools. We therefore recommend that Iran continues its efforts to eradicate poverty and strengthens policies to prevent school dropout. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Belarus.
Thank you, Vice President. We welcome the delegation of Iran and thank it for the presentation of its national report. Belarus notes with satisfaction the progressive improvement of the legislation and the development of institutions to ensure the rights of the most vulnerable groups of the population in Iran. We welcome Iran's efforts to achieve an adequate level of social protection of the population in conditions of the unfair economic sanctions that have been imposed against this country. We note the practical steps made to protect women's rights and children's rights, including the establishment of the status of an office for women and the family, the establishment of a fund for women's employment, and the establishment of a national coordination center on the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We recommend that the adopted programs for the social economic development of the country be continued as they promote human rights, and that the work on the national strategic plan in the area of human rights be completed. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Belgium.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Thank you, Madam President. Belgium commends the efforts made by the government of Iran to follow up the results of the first UPR. My delegation welcomes the statement by the new President of the Republic of Iran towards greater freedom of expression. Belgium recommends thus to the government to repeal all legal provisions which hinder freedom of expression, assembly and association as guaranteed by the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. My delegation is particularly concerned, however, by the growth in executions in Iran over the 4 years which have passed and continuation of execution of minor children. Belgium is also recommends a moratorium on capital punishment, particularly for children. Amendment of all laws and practices to guarantee that no person under 18 at the time of the crime could be condemned to death. And in countries that practice the death penalty, it's particularly important that the process be carried out in a faultless way in conformity with international standards. Belgium recommends to the government of Iran that it ensures immediate access to a freely chosen lawyer from the beginning of the procedure, including the initial questioning, and through to the end of the judicial procedure, as well as access to the trial in its entirety. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Benin.
Thank you, Madam President. The delegation of Benin welcomes the delegation of Iran and notes the progress made by the Iranian authorities in implementing the recommendations ensuing from the first cycle of the UPR. Benin particularly welcomes the new law on criminal proceedings to facilitate access to justice and the creation of the Office of the Vice President responsible for issues of women and the family. The delegation of Benin recommends to Iran, firstly, that it join the second optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which seeks to abolish the death penalty, secondly, adopts the general law against discrimination, and thirdly, recommends dialogue and cooperation in the field of promotion and protection of human rights. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Bhutan.
Madam President, Bhutan warmly welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the 20th session of the UPR Working Group. Bhutan is pleased to note from the presentation that the government of Iran has addressed a significant number of recommendations received during their first UPR. Measures taken to advance women's rights in the area of education, health, employment, poverty, and to fight violence against women are laudable. Equally, the efforts made on the protection of children and their rights are noteworthy, and in particular, Bhutan is pleased to note the recent introduction of the Protection of Children and Adolescents Without Parental Care or with Abusive Parent Act 2013. Bhutan is also happy to note that Iran is well on track to achieve most of the Millennium Development Goals, and the significant improvements have been made in terms of human development. However, like many developing countries, the report highlights that the country still faces challenges of unemployment and sustained income inequality. Bhutan would like to recommend that the government of Iran intensify efforts to create more employment opportunities for all, including the women population. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Bolivia.
Gracias, señor.
Thank you very much, Vice President. The plurinational state of Bolivia extends a cordial welcome to the delegation of Iran. The Republic of Iran has included in various development plans the Millennium Development Goals. It has provided basic services to its citizens, such as health, education, and access to an electricity grid. So it has improved its Human Development Index. We commend it on having met its Millennium Development Goals before 2015. In the constructive spirit which is the hallmark of the UPR exercise, the delegation of Bolivia wishes to extend the following recommendations to its brotherly delegation: to extend the human right to water as part of Resolution 64292 of the General Assembly, and that it continue the measures it has taken to promote the rights of rural peasants and all rural inhabitants. We urge the country to continue to protect human rights through its political and administrative institutions. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Madam Vice President, we welcome the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the 20th session of the UPR and thank the head of delegation for the comprehensive presentation of the national report. According to the information provided in the national report, we welcome the positive steps vis-à-vis cooperation with human rights treaty bodies and other UN bodies too. While expressing our sincere expectation that the Islamic Republic of Iran will further develop its national system of the protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms, we raise the following recommendations. To fully cooperate with and allow visits of the UN Special Rapporteurs, to take additional steps to improve gender equality and enhance women's position in marriage, divorce, nationality, custody of children and inheritance, to reform laws that contain discriminatory provisions, and to address the serious problem with landmines, bearing in mind the fact that the Iranian government itself reported having over 60 million landmines laid during the Iran-Iraq war, especially in the southern provinces. We encourage the government of Iran to ratify the Ottawa Treaty. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Brazil.
Brazil recognizes the recent progress observed in the country, particularly in the domain of economic and social rights, and is confident that the Iranian government will maintain and strengthen its policies in this realm. In order to enhance the effectiveness of recommendations submitted by Brazil and accepted by Iran during its participation in the first UPR cycle, Brazil would like to further recommend the adoption of comprehensive measures on the protection of women against any form of public or domestic violence, and the implementation of a national policy to protect women at risk and to bring perpetrators to justice, as well as the adoption of measures for the protection of human rights defenders and of journalists. We also recommend that Iran, in line with its standing invitation to special procedures, engage with and accept visits of special procedures. Finally, we recommend the adoption of policies and mechanisms to avoid that members of any religious minority suffer from any kind of discrimination or human rights violation for exerting their right to worship according to their faith. Thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Brunei Darussalam.
Madam Vice President, Brunei Darussalam warmly welcomes His Excellency Dr. Mohammad Larijani, Secretary General of the High Council for Human Rights of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and his delegation, and thanks him for the comprehensive presentation. Brunei Darussalam welcomes the Iranian government's efforts to ensure the promotion and protection of the vulnerable groups, especially women, children, and disabled. In this relation, we note that comprehensive approach has been taken in the areas of education, health and social empowerment, and integration to empower these groups. Brunei Darussalam therefore recommends that the government continues to implement these programs through the established national mechanisms as well as with the relevant NGOs and international organizations. We are also encouraged by the initiatives to enhance the health services coverage in the country, such as through the setting up of the health network to provide direct primary health care access to its population. In this regard, Brunei Darussalam recommends the government to continue carrying out these efforts according to its national development plan. Finally, we welcome Iran's continued commitment towards the promotion and protection of human rights, both regionally and internationally. As a member of NAM, Brunei Darussalam appreciates Iran's active role as the coordinator of the NAM group in Geneva and its valuable efforts to facilitate the group's various initiatives. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Burkina Faso.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Thank you, Madam President. We welcome the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran and thank it for presenting support. The report reflects the efforts made by Iran to implement the recommendations from the first UPR, the measures taken since to improve its legislation in order to better protect human rights, and the creation of new mechanisms with the same objective. We therefore congratulate the delegation of Iran. However, we invite it to step up its efforts on the matter of the rights of women and children and on justice, and improve cooperation with the United Nations human rights mechanisms. In a constructive spirit, my delegation would like to make the following recommendations to Iran: to consider ratifying the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and its optional protocol, as well as the Convention on the Protection of the Rights of All Migrant Workers, reconsider its general reservation to the Convention on the Rights of the Child in order to withdraw it and fully subscribe to the two protocols, and strengthen its national legislation in line with the international instruments that it has ratified. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Burundi.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President. My delegation welcomes the delegation of Iran and congratulates it on the report and its presentation, or indeed congratulates the government of Iran for the progress made since the presentation of its most recent report. We commend the firm commitment of the government of Iran to improving the human rights situation, particularly through its policy under state agencies, training in human rights, and the National Strategic Plan of Action on Human Rights. Our delegation welcomes the measures taken by Iran to guarantee the right to health for all, with a particular concern for rural populations, farmers and nomads. We welcome the strong measures taken against the drug trade and all of the efforts made in that field. We welcome Iran's efforts to combat terrorism and encourage it to continue not only in that field but also in promoting and protecting human rights in general. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Canada.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Canada would recommend that Iran, 1, investigate and prosecute all those responsible for the mistreatment or abuse of detained persons in Iran, including during the attacks on prisoners in Evin Prison in April 2014 and in the wake of the 2009 presidential election. 2, revise the Islamic Penal Code to ensure consistency with its international obligations, including Article 6 of the ICCPR, so that the death penalty is reserved for most serious crimes, never imposed for crimes committed by persons below 18 years of age and never imposed arbitrarily. 3, take legislative and administrative measures to remove legal restrictions and social barriers to women's equal participation in the workforce and access to education and government decision-making positions. 4, amend its press law to define the exceptions to Article 24 of its Constitution in specific terms and that do not infringe upon freedom of expression. 5, end discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. Canada would make the following observation. It is greatly concerned by Iran's failure to apply standards of due process and rule of law in the execution of Ms. Reina Jabari. Thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Javad Bashir Larijani and the delegation to respond to questions which have been raised so far. Excellency, you have the floor.
Madam Vice President, thank you very much for very good and effective leadership you are showing in the August meeting here. I would like to thank all the honorable delegation who participated in this debate and really appreciate the recommendations. Even if we may not agree with the preamble of the recommendation, mostly we agree with the recommendation itself. But anyhow, Madam Vice President, please allow me, I ask my colleagues to present their views, and also it will contain answers to some of the questions made in here. Then at the end, if the time permits, I have some concluding remarks. Now I would like to ask Dr. Amiri, the noble judge, and right now he is the acting deputy of the Minister of State, with a lot of responsibility and services in his CV, to take the floor and to give some explanation about the democratic rights of the citizens in Iran. Thank you.
متشکرم خانم رئیس، خانم ها و آقایان. در جمهوری اسلامی ایران در اجرای اصل 26 قانون اساسی و بر اساس مفاد قانون فعالیت احزاب و تشکل‌های صنفی و تخصصی و اقلیت‌های دینی تاکنون بیش از 23
Can I just kindly ask for interpretation?
We apologize, Madam. The interpretation team is working on it.
Please go ahead.
به نام خدا متشکرم خانم رئیس، خانم ها و آقایان. در جمهوری اسلامی ایران در اجرای اصل 26 قانون اساسی
Ma'am, interpretation is available. Excuse me. In accordance with Article 26 of the Constitution and the activity of political parties, labor and professional associations and religious minorities Code, the Islamic Republic of Iran has issued permits for 230 political parties, 400 labor and professional associations, and 60 minority religious associations. Different sections of society, including workers, teachers, university professors, engineers, physicians, and women, have their own particular political parties and associations. It is worth mentioning that in the past 12 months, the Political Parties Commission, which is composed of representatives of the three branches of government, has issued permits for the establishment of 14 political organizations and 23 professional associations to fulfill its campaign promises. The new administration has reinvigorated the Political Parties Article 10 Commission and has met with the secretaries and central committees of different political parties. In accordance with Article 27 of the Constitution, organization of rallies and meetings without weapons is permissible. Also, note to Article 6 of the Political Parties Code and its rules of procedure define legal prerequisites for the organization of gatherings and rallies. Each year, on average, 300 political, professional, social, labor, foreign, and international gatherings and rallies are organized within the parameters of the above law. In accordance with the Constitution and Political Parties Code, religious minorities can apply for permits and establish associations to serve a variety of purposes. These include organization of religious services, ethnic ceremonies and festivals, lectures, seminars, religious publications, restoration of religious shrines, establishment of charity funds, health clinics, manufacturing and distribution cooperatives, daycare centers, sports clubs, so on and so forth. To date, 53 associations have obtained permits from the aforementioned commission. After his election as the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Dr. Rouhani appointed one of his close advisors, who hails from a well-established ethnic group, as the President's Special Assistant for Ethnic and Religious Minority Affairs. This in itself has helped facilitate relations and contacts between this sector of society and the high-ranking officials of the Islamic Republic of Iran. In addition, in the past year and as part of his provincial visits, the President has met with Sunni, ethnic and minority scholars and activists. Additionally, 335 members of various ethnic and Sunni communities have been appointed as high-ranking state, provincial and local officials, as well as ministers, vice ministers, deputy ministers, governor generals and local governors. An example would be a female deputy to the president who is a Turkish speaker, or the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, admittedly a very sensitive and important post, who is an Arab speaker. I myself, as the Vice Minister for the Interior, hail from the Kurdish community. Incidentally, Iranian ethnic communities have the right to speak in their mother tongues, and local radio and television stations broadcast in local languages. Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, the Islamic Republic of Iran pays special attention to non-governmental organizations. In my own ministry, one of the deputies is responsible for such organizations and has worked hard to expand their scope of operation. He has also compiled and enacted the administrative bylaws for the establishment and operation of NGOs to further facilitate their activity. Using this document, the Ministry of Interior, Office of Governor Generals, Offices of Local Governors, Ministry of Youth and Sports, and the Ministry of Culture and Islamic Guidance have so far issued 17,000 national rather nationwide permits to NGOs on human rights, environmental conservation, social rights, animal rights, and community welfare. According to the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the administration of the country is dependent upon the popular vote of the people, and the highest offices of the state are chosen through the direct or indirect vote of the people. The leader is chosen by the vote cast by the Council of Experts. Members of the Council of Experts are in turn chosen by the direct vote of the people. The president, members of the parliament, and members of city and village councils are chosen by the direct vote of the people as well. In the past 30 years, on average, we have had 11 presidential elections, 9 majlis elections, and 5 city and village council elections. Additionally, the average rate of participation in these elections has been 60%. The latest election was the presidential election, which was democratically held on 14 June 2013. And with 72.8% of eligible voters casting their ballots. In this election, Dr. Hassan Rouhani competed with 8 other candidates to become the president. I should also add that various administrations have had the various political leanings, and this alludes to the freedom of elections and the choice in the Islamic Republic of Iran. The election mechanism and its monitoring process are part and parcel of the people's right to be involved in the general administration of the state and be equal before the law and enjoy legal protection for their indigenous characteristics. As such, these concepts correspond to Article 25 of the Civil and Political Rights Covenant. In addition, in Iranian elections, candidates have the right to nominate representatives to monitor ballot boxes. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Now I want to ask one of my colleagues in this delegation, a very famous journalist and a scholar, an intellectual. Usually we are engaged in hot debate together on intellectual issues. Dr. Intizami, he is right now the Vice Minister of Culture. He wants to give a report on free speech. Dr. Intizami, please.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. خانم رئیس، حضار محترم، از زمان روی کار آمدن دولت جناب آقای دکتر روحانی پیشرفت‌های ملموسی در توسعه مطبوعات رخ داده است که گزارش کوتاهی از برخی تحولات را به استحضار می‌رساند.
Sir, again I have to interrupt.
I do apologize. No, please go ahead. You're ready now. Yes, ma'am. I do apologize. The press law goes back to 107 years ago, and it has been amended and approved by the Parliament on different occasions. In the press law, the chapter on the rights of the press precedes the chapter on the elimination of the press. That is indicative of the due attention of lawmakers. Article 4 of the press law stipulates that no government or non-government authority has the right to exert pressure on the press for the publication of materials or articles or otherwise exercise censorship and control on the press. The prospective bylaw states that the violator of the said article would be sentenced to 6 months to 24 months of suspension from civil services, and in case of repeating the same offense, to permanent dismissal. And this law stresses the freedom of the press. According to the Constitution, the courts of the press, there is a board of jurors available, and so that the rights of the journalists are observed according to Article 10 of the relevant law. a board of 7 persons, 1 judge, the Minister of Culture, an MP, a journalist, also a jurist, and a member of the High Cultural Council is chosen, and this guarantees that the government does not put needless pressure on the press. Regardless, journalists can approach the court to object to the vote, and 214 papers and 813 journals are being published. 2,400 journals have been given permits in the past 4 years, and we have news agencies, 400 news agencies, and 30% of journals are distributed locally in provincial cities in neighboring provinces. Out of this 1,000 journals, 70% of the total publications in the country are distributed in local dialects and also in border cities. In the past years, 130 journals have been given permit, and they concentrate on women's affairs. And I would like to continue by saying that the owners of media have a responsibility to ensure and provide health insurance to their employees and journalists. And also, we have managed to label journalism as a hard vocation, a very difficult vocation. And also, I need to relate to the approach by the government to make journals as private as possible and to use the capacity of civil society. We have seen an increase in the number of overseas press offices in Iran from 114 to 170, and we have had hundreds of overseas journalists visiting Iran in the past 4 years. And also the new law guaranteeing free access to information. According to this law, any government decisions which limit access for citizens, well, information should be available to citizens, and these laws need to be made public. And this law guarantees that such decisions are made public, and also it advocates good governance, and this is an appropriate instrument to facilitate the workings of journalists and the media in accordance with international rules of journalistic ethics. Infringements and violations by journalists is not acceptable. Naturally, if they commit unprofessional and conduct, they will be dealt with accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam, if you permit me, I ask another member of our delegation, famous scholar, Dr. Sadeghi, is Deputy of Judiciary. He wants to give a report on the achievements of judiciary in the past 4 years.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. خانم ها آقایان،
in the name of God, the compassionate and merciful. Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. This is how we Muslims treat others by expressing peace, friendship, and goodwill. I speak on behalf of a people whose image of agitation and judges has been gleaned from the conduct of Ali, the commander of the faithful. And the Almighty has directed us to return what has been entrusted to us to the true owners. And when we sit in judgment, we should be fair, even if it is against our parents. And he says that when you are judging for your enemies, you should be fair and just. As I said, our image has been gleaned from the conduct of Ali, the commander of the faithful and the successor of the Holy Prophet of Islam, 14 centuries ago, to describe the concept of all being equal before the law. He said, they fall into two groups. They're either your brother in Islam or your fellow human being. When implementing the law, black or white, Arab or non-Arab, men or women, Jew, Muslim or Christian, close relative or strangers, made no difference to him. This image has been incorporated into the Constitution and other laws. The independence of the judiciary and judges, public trials, the need for court decisions to be reasoned and legally sound, the presence of a panel of jurors in press and political crime hearings, preparations by the administrative justice tribunal to prevent government overreach and infringements. And the judiciary of the Islamic Republic of Iran believes in the appellate process, and the new laws, the Islamic Penal Law 2013, have incorporated many new and innovative ideas to guarantee the rights of all, especially women and children. Some of these innovative ideas call for the protection of citizens' rights in all stages of investigation, interrogation of women and children by trained female officers, establishment of children's court and police, possibility of involvement by NGOs in hearings, and also the presence of attorneys in all stages of investigation, from the first to the final stages of hearing. And also the new family law provides protection for, obviously, families. And now, additionally, judges are now required to consider the points of view and reasoning of female counselors and are not allowed to swiftly dismiss their line of reasoning. Services for the other sections of the society. And we have moved a lot of our services to online services which save the citizens time and money. One of our rights, ladies and gentlemen, who live in another part of the world, is to have our own values and safeguard our culture. We should not allow human rights to take this away. For example, qisas or retribution is a right of the society, and the government is not allowed to take away this right. Some of the punishments which I alluded to refer to these. Of course, those who own such rights are recommended to forgive and forget, and if there is a capital punishment involved, to forgive, and the government tries its hardest to secure their consent, but it cannot do more than that and force them to give up their rights. In accordance to UNODC figures, 80% of drug seizures in the world belong to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Therefore, it would be natural 80% of punishments, drug-related punishments in the world, to be carried out by this country. In the Islamic Republic of Iran, these figures are far lower. In the Islamic Republic of Iran, no one is arrested for their points of view and their beliefs. Cases of arrest mostly relate to espionage, and of course, these cases are heard in a fair fashion, and also an attorney is present, and also they have been condemned by the appellate process. In many cases, the defendants the cases against them have been quashed. And also the Zionist regime supports some groups, and this tells us that their concern is not human rights. Rather, they are trying to create some sort of an economic rent for those who are connected to them, and statistics show that the rate of conviction for the community compared to their numbers is much lower, and the Islamic Republic of Iran compared to others treats them better. I repeat that in Islam, human rights is based on our innate dignity. Holy Quran says that we gave dignity to the children of man, and the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, says that everyone is equal like the comb and have equal rights. So, as Muslims, we respect the freedom of a people and the right to benefit from God-given rights. This is recognized even for our enemies. Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet and the third Shia Imam, with regards to human rights during the Karbala incident, provided water to his thirsty enemies. And this is very telling. This is how we look at human rights. However, our paradigm, again, when it comes to human rights, has to do with Yazid, who opposed Imam Hussein, who did not allow Imam Hussein and his army to have access to drinking water before the battle broke out. And 3 days later, even young children were thirsty and asking for water, but they were killed nonetheless. So we are the followers of that Imam, and we have always said that why were they killed like this for crime?
President, thank you very much. Now, if you permit me, I would like to introduce another member of our delegation, Dr. ادواری. He's a professor at university, and also he's an airplane pilot as well. He's a Zoroastrian. Perhaps with this talk he should make us fly in the area of human rights. You have the seat, please.
شناو تأهور مزدا ایوپنت هایو اشهه به نام دانای بزرگ هستی بخش راه در جهان یکیست و آن راه راستی است خانم رئیس
the creator of the all-knowing Mr. Chairperson, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I have taken the floor on behalf of the Zoroastrian religious minority, whom I also represent in the Parliament of the Islamic Republic of Iran. As a member of various non-Muslim Iranian religions, we consider each other as compatriots, irrespective of all their attributes and divergences. We share the affinity and the pride of being compatriots. Unlike many blanket societies where people are all of the same race, coloring creed, Iranian of different races, origin and cultures, as well as race of religion, partly share the same nationality. As the great leader of our nation said, the greatest pride of Iranian lies in their being the first monotheist nation of the history, irrespective of the race, religion, color, and creed. Recalling our joint culture, heritage, and values rooted in the history beyond recall, Iranian of all religions and social minorities have always enjoyed the right to profess the practice of their own culture. Mrs. Chairperson,
As a Zoroastrian member of the parliament, a university professor, and deputy of a renowned science and technology park, I have been unanimously appointed by other members of the parliament of the Islamic Republic of Iran, including those of religious minorities, as the head of the Special Research of Technology Committee of the parliament. There we approve and supervise Iran's National Research and Technology Development Plan and prepare the respective bill for the parliament. Among other things, together with my colleagues from other religious minorities in the parliament, we positively contribute to the plan of comprehensive, non-selective, non-discriminatory, and all-embracing educational and academic programs for the national of Iran, irrespective of any attributed. Based on the latest census in 2011, Iran has a population of 75 million, including only 74,000 Zoroastrian and 11,000 Christians and 8,756 Jews who are represented in the parliament. It is worth mentioning that religious minorities form less than 1% of Iran's population, yet they are represented by 5 members in their country's parliament, while there is 1 representative for every 150,000 Iranian Muslims. This is to guarantee political participation by minority groups, which is commonly known as guaranteed seats. In accordance with Article 13 of the Constitution, the members of all minorities, irrespective of their population, are granted the liberty to practice their creed and tradition all over the country. The constitutional liberty is also indiscriminately carried over to education in their exclusive languages and publication of their books and press, and the practice of their other civil liberties and traditions. It is worth recalling that, moreover, subsidies are allocated to religious minorities associations every year from the annual budget, and they always have access to this. More than 140 concerts and stage performances and celebrations of religious holidays by Armenians, Jews, and Zoroastrians were supported by the government. Mrs. Chairperson, I wish I had a bit more time to expound on other facets and opportunities of the religious minorities of Iran and their affinity with their Muslim brothers and sisters, as well as their various threats and challenges. In view of the short time accorded to me, however, I tend to conclude my remarks by recalling the great and eternal teaching of the Holy Zoroaster that called us on the good thinking, good words, and good deeds. I thank you, Mrs. Chairperson.
Madam Alia, member of the parliament, to give her presentation on the situation of women in Iran.
Mrs. Chairperson, distinguished delegates, as a member of the parliament, a 3-term member of the parliament, and recalling that there is a close affinity between men and women while embracing on the cultures of Islam and Iran, we do a lot together in respect of family and social life. The first Iran organization for women was established about 30 years ago. And since then, we have continued our efforts to establish the women's status. The Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran has also duly and amply provided for equal opportunities for men and women in employment and administration of the state's governance. In the meantime, in the context of equality and justice for all, and strengthening the family foundation, and extensive attempt has been made by the parliamentarian to further promote and strengthen women's individual and social status. The law on the right and responsibilities of women, inclusive of 184 articles, and the law on the protection of the family, comprising of 50 articles, both address the promotion and protection of the women's rights. Among other instruments, Article 230 of Iran's fifth-year economic development plan calls for the development of the women. To further promote women's rights, maternity leave for women has increased to 9 months, and a 2-week leave has also been awarded to the women and their husbands. And those having children below the age of 6 or women having husbands with disability or afflicted with diseases are also covered. Social security for women in rural areas is given precedence over women head of the household against no payment is also being implemented. Adoption of new economic and employment policies and laws for women to promote their status has led to considerable increase in Iran as well. Forced marriage by virtue of Article 3 of Law of Marriage is subject to imprisonment, and such marriages are legally null and void according to the civil law and can be abrogated by the court. According to the existing law and our Islamic democratic principles, the men are obliged to provide for the alimony even if the wife is earning her living. According to the existing law and our Islamic democratic principles, all nationals of Iran, irrespective of their gender or other attributes, could actively and freely participate in the non-selective and non-discriminatory parliamentary elections. Presently, 9 women members of the parliament are closely involved in the specialized committee of the parliament and its women fraction. Women candidature rates increased from 1.8% in the first round to 8.2% in the 8th round of the parliamentary election, and their candidacy for the political parties competition, a further increase in the growth of the participation is still expected. In respect of violation against women, it is worth recalling that although incidence of the violence against women, unlike some countries, is not also rampant in Iran, a preventive bill on protecting the security of women against violence has been submitted to the parliament so as to reduce sporadic violence against them. Among other measures, training of the women police and specialized consultants are also adopted. Mrs. Chairperson, 35 years after the culmination of the Islamic Revolution and despite the imposition of unilateral and forceful sanctions against Iran, the growth trends of the women's situation here has been constantly on the increase. I have a very short time, but I have prepared some documents that touches on the bills and our action in the parliament for covering and promoting the right of the women. I thank you, Mrs. Chairperson.
President, it seems that we have only 15 minutes left, right?
Altogether 15 minutes left, right, so including your concluding remarks.
So by permission, I want to address some of the comments which has been given here and with my concluding remarks. Madam Vice President, it is apparent that Islamic Republic of Iran is attaching enormous importance to its participation and active engagement in UPR deliberation. There is an important reason for that. Madam President, this is perhaps the unique mechanism of United Nations and human rights mechanism which puts all the countries, member states of UN on equal foot and in equal position. So the more we can enrich this process, the more hopeful human rights could be expounded and promoted away from politicization, away from prejudice and non-prudent selectivity. Madam Vice President, let me address myself to a number of issues in here as comments and recommendations presented. One thing which I want to promise in this August meeting that we will take all the recommendations seriously one by one. We try to explain our position vis-à-vis those recommendations, and more than that, I will promise all honorable states who presented a recommendation a special answer to them or views about the recommendation which will be directed to them in written form. So we don't leave any of this recommendation without noticing, and we don't consider them not worthy of deliberation. One issue which has been iterated too much in numerous of recommendation was about a recent execution of Rayhana Jabbari. Well, let me just explain the case, and then I have a conclusion on that. 7 years ago, a girl was accused and a charge brought against her of murdering his lover. So it took about 7 years of deliberation. She had numerous lawyers in all the layers of the court proceeding, and she had ample time to defend her. Not only one judge, but numerous judges. One judge, 3 judges, 5 group of judges, 7 group of judges. They presided over the court. She defended themselves, the lawyer defended her, and at the end, the court came with the indictment that it was a first-degree murder with intention. And then she was indicted to capital punishment. Since there was no sign of any public crime intention in this crime, it is considered qisas. Qisas is in fact the right, the private right of the heirs of the victim. The government, the judiciary is not in position to execute. In fact, we tried and lobbied a lot to solicit the forgiveness from the heirs of the victim. Unfortunately, we were not able. Perhaps one reason for that was the huge propaganda which was created against this case. And in my last meeting with the son of the victim, which I requested him very humbly to forgive this case, and also I told him, look, you lost your beloved one. Let us, others, they don't lose their beloved one. Forgive. And this is the teaching of Quran. He said, we had the intention to forgive, but with this media blitz on us, even officials of different countries are accusing our father that he was engaged in forced and violent rape. So we cannot come across this humiliation. Anyhow, we were not successful to solicit forgiveness from the heirs of the victim. So, unfortunately, this execution went on. Though we are very sorry that 2 nationals of ours have lost their life, but capital punishment or qisas in this sense is a unique peculiarity of our legal system. And I think it's worth for the Western countries to look into it. The idea that only the good things are in the Western community, the West and the rest, this is a very destructive idea about human rights. Dear representatives and honorable ambassadors in this August meeting, please accept the idea that others also have a good way of life. The only good lifestyle should not be considered the way that the Western community is living. And you should not request others to follow your suit. Let me give you an example of homosexuality. You know that major documents of human rights has been adopted something about 70 years ago, but up to 20 years ago, most of the Western community, they had in mind that homosexuality should be forbidden. Homosexuality was considered a disease. Even in the United States, a genius in computer science, Alan Turing, was indicted for homosexual tendencies in Los Angeles, and he was forced to progesterone therapy to cure his disease. For these 50 years, nobody in the Western community said that homosexuality is against human rights. I mean, the laws against homosexuality. Forbidding homosexuality was not considered in contradiction with the human rights. All of a sudden, when homosexuality is becoming a fashion of lifestyle in the Western community, you are requesting every other state to follow your suit. This is a bad egocentrism. Universality means we should universally indulge in the promotion of human rights. We should have a multicultural universalism. Universalism should not be a vehicle for other countries to attack other way of lifestyles. So, in elaborating the case of Rayhana Jabbari, I should emphasize that no country, no state, no NGO told us where in our judiciary was wrong in dealing with her. Only they condemned us. This media police does not help promotion of human rights. UPR is a fantastic place that we can indulge in serious, substantial discussion. Noble representatives of the states who brought the issue to us, they never told us where we went wrong about this case. They should point out that what was wrong, where in our judicial system was not acceptable. To condemn across the board is not a way of criticism, is not a constructive critique. We should indulge in substantial discussion to the promotion of human rights. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Excellency. We will now resume our interactive dialogue, and the next speaker on my list is Chad.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam President. The delegation of Chad welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran and congratulates it on the presentation of its national report under the second UPR cycle. We welcome the efforts to promote human rights, especially in the area of the protection of vulnerable groups. This includes the adoption of the General Plan for the Development of the Family, the ratification of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and so on. We welcome the numerous initiatives undertaken by Iran in the framework of its coordination with the non-allied countries, as well as within the framework of the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, in South-South cooperation and technical assistance for developing countries. My delegation deplores the economic sanctions imposed upon Iran and appeals for cooperation with Iran, which is a country fighting to improve the living conditions of its population. It is only this approach that will allow the Islamic Republic of Iran to live up to its obligations to promote and protect human rights. My delegation, therefore, wishes the best of success to the Republic of Iran in its effort to promote and protect human rights. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Chile.
Gracias.
Thank you. Chile has considered with very great interest the information provided on the general policies of the Fifth Development Plan and the new laws that have an impact on the human rights sector and on fundamental freedoms. We are, however, very concerned at the lack of protection and effective guarantee of human rights, particularly civil and political rights, especially the rights of women and children, and when it comes to the administration of justice. Because of this, we respectfully make the following recommendations. First of all, that without further ado, a national human rights institution be established pursuant to the Paris Principles. Secondly, that you take provisions to avoid all forms of discrimination against women and girls, and particularly ensure that members of the Baha'i community have access to higher education, as well as members of other minorities. Thirdly, that you do away with discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation, particularly the LGBTI community, in law and in practice. And finally, to increase legal measures to guarantee due process and impartiality in the administration of justice, including the independence of judges and the Bar Association, bearing particular attention to the recommendations on the death penalty issued by the Human Rights Committee, especially on offenders who are still minors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. The next speaker on my list is China.
Thank you, Madam President. The Chinese delegation welcomes the delegation of Iran to this meeting. China notes that Iran has included the MDGs in its national development plans. It strives to eliminate poverty, successfully providing basic services such as health, education, and electricity to its people, strives to improve its Human Development Index, protect and promote all human rights, including the right to development. Effective measures have been taken with positive progress in the protection of women, children, people with disabilities, and minorities. At the same time, we note Iran's concern on impact of sanctions on the enjoyment of human rights by its people. China calls upon the international community to view Iran's human rights situation in an impartial and objective manner, conduct constructive dialogue and cooperation with the country. China recommends that Iran continue to raise the level of its public services by further improving the quality and coverage in the rural areas. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Costa Rica.
Costa Rica welcomes the distinguished delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran. We thank them for the presentation of their report, and we take note of the measures which have been taken in the period under review, or between the reviews. For effective promotion and protection of human rights, there must be full cooperation with human rights mechanisms, with treaty bodies, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the Human Rights Council, and all of its special procedures, especially the Special Rapporteur on the human rights situation in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Because of this, we recommend that in the short term there be a coordination of the visits requested by the Human Rights Council's special procedures. President, we view with concern the generalized use of the death penalty as a part of criminal justice policy and its use on individuals under 18 and the use of stoning as punishment. We recommend a moratorium on the use of the death penalty, aiming for it to be abolished altogether. And we're finally concerned at the worsening situation of the human rights of women and those belonging to minority groups. Thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Cuba.
Gracias.
Thank you. Cuba welcomes the distinguished delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran. We thank them for the presentation they've made today, which bears witness to the government's commitment to the UPR mechanism. We note the progress that has been made by the country in health, education, the rights of persons with disability, the rights of the child, and the implementation of the right to development. We recognize the fact that the Millennium Development Goals have been built into the 5-year development plans, which will have allowed for Iran to meet many of these goals before 2015. All of this has been possible despite the unilateral coercive measures imposed in the country, which run counter to international human rights standards and provisions. We respectfully recommend that Iran continue denouncing unilateral coercive measures on all occasions and in all fora, that the country continue to provide more technical assistance to developing countries. We wish the Islamic Republic of Iran the best of success in its second Universal Periodic Review. Thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Cyprus.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Allow me to welcome the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran and thank His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Larijani for his presentation. Cyprus wishes to seize the opportunity to commend the measures that the government of Iran has taken to implement its international human rights obligation. In particular, we welcome the designation of a national focal point for the conversion of the rights of the child, as well as the appointment of a special assistant to the President for ethnic groups and religious minorities. Cyprus would like to acknowledge the recent establishment of the Office of the Vice President for Women and Family Affairs by the Iranian government. In the same vein, we encourage the government of Iran to strengthen its efforts to ensure the functionality of the monitoring and reporting mechanism in respect of violations of children's rights. Finally, we recommend that the government of Iran considers abolishing the death penalty and ratifying the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court at its earliest convenience. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to the Czech Republic.
Madam Vice President, the Czech Republic welcomes the delegation of Iran and thanks for its informative interventions. Drawing on our advanced questions, we would like to recommend that the government of Iran 1. Enhance freedom of the media, establish effective protection mechanisms for journalists against attacks and intimidation, and grant its people free access to electronic media. 2. Amend the Islamic Penal Code and outlaw inhuman corporal punishments. 3. Accede to the Convention Against Torture and its optional protocol. 4. Abolish the death penalty, at least for juvenile perpetrators. 5. Accede to the CEDAW. And finally, review its legislation and policy so as to ensure freedom of religion of persons belonging to religious minorities, including Baha'i, as well as protection of the other human rights without any discrimination. I thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam President. DPRK warmly welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran. We note in its national report special attention was paid for protection and promotion of the rights of the vulnerable group. In this regard, we recommend Iran to continue adequate measures for addressing the special needs of women and protecting children from violence. It is also recommended to make it continue the efforts to improve social security system for better safeguarding the elderly and persons with disabilities. While noting that despite economic sanctions and unilateral coercive measures, commendable achievements were made in the field of economic, social and cultural rights, we recommend Iran to intensify and carry forward its efforts, particularly in the field of right to education. Finally, we hope that international mechanisms based on mutual respect and understanding would provide a better environment to facilitate Iran's continued efforts for protection and promotion of human rights. Thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Denmark.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Denmark thanks the Iranian delegation for its presentation. We are troubled by continued reports of widespread use of torture, ill-treatment and arbitrary detention of prisoners in Iran. Denmark recommends that Iran by law provides unobstructed access to legal counsel throughout all phases of criminal investigation, trial and appeal. Ensure the accused is informed of this right immediately upon arrest and give the defendants and their lawyers unrestricted access to the full case file and all evidence against the accused. Denmark further recommends that Iran ensures, in accordance with ICCPR Articles 5 and 7, freedom from torture, violent detention for all, regardless also of sexual orientation. We continue to be deeply concerned about intimidation, threats and systematic discrimination against minorities, not least the Baha'i community. Denmark recommends that Iran take all necessary measures to ensure the protection and non-discrimination of religious minorities, including by immediately ending production of government-controlled media programs, spreading misinformation about religious minorities, and incite hatred against them. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Djibouti.
Thank you, Madam President. We warmly welcome the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran and thank them for the excellent presentation of their national report in the framework of the 20th UPR session. We take note of the efforts undertaken by the Islamic Republic of Iran to promote and protect human rights in their country. Moreover, we appreciate the fruitful exchanges underway at different levels between Iran and the High Commissioner's Office for Human Rights to strengthen and promote human rights. Raising, training programs, and capacity building. 3. Continue social and economic reforms with a view to creating more employment. And to conclude, we would wish the best success to the Islamic Republic of Iran in accomplishing its objectives towards a full enjoyment of human rights. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to the State of Palestine.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The State of Palestine welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the second cycle of the UPR and thanks it for its presentation. We commend the efforts made by the government to implement recommendations that emanated from the first UPR cycle, including in terms of poverty reduction and efforts in the healthcare sector, despite the obstacles and challenges posed by the economic sanctions imposed on the country. Since the first UPR review, Iran undertook a number of measures to combat poverty. Despite this, the unemployment rate remains high, particularly among women and youth, and in this regard, we recommend that Iran step up its employment stimulation measures and enhance access of the poor to basic services, including sanitation, health, and education. We welcome efforts by Iran to expand health services in rural areas. We remain concerned that a significant portion of the population is not covered by health insurance schemes and recommend that the government intensify its efforts to ensure universal access to health insurance, including access to maternal and child health care. We wish Iran every success in its review. I thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Eritrea.
Madam Chair, Eritrea warmly welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran led by His Excellency Minister of Justice and
Microphone, please.
Microphone.
Despite many challenges that the public is facing, including economic sanctions that impact on the well-being and economic rights of its citizens, we note with satisfaction the ongoing efforts of the government in promoting and protecting human rights from the report of today's discussion. My delegation values the UPR as one of the best mechanisms to address challenges of human rights and is along this conviction that we always support the process. My delegation would like to commend the efforts of the delegation to address the concerns of the delegation on the floor. Madam Chair, I would like to commend the delegation of Islamic Republic of Iran the following with the hope that the delegation will take on board these recommendations. 1. Continue its humanitarian aid to least developed countries. 2. Continue efforts in order to increase participation of women in public spheres. 3. Continue Islamic policy in promoting equal opportunities with respect to employment. 4. Step up efforts to allocate more resources in the Constitution. In conclusion,
I thank you for your statement. I give the floor to Estonia.
Thank you, Madam President. Estonia welcomes the high-level delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran to its second UPR. Estonia would like to encourage Iran to fully cooperate with the Council's special procedures, including the Special Rapporteur on Iran. While we welcome Iran's efforts to help increase the presence of women in political, social and cultural life, Iran continues to commit discrimination and violence towards women. We are also concerned about the disregard of freedom of expression online and offline, and urge the government to assure the full protection of the rights of human rights defenders, journalists and online activists. Estonia recommends to the government of Iran, first, to ratify the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Second, we partially reiterate our first cycle recommendation to Iran to extend the moratorium on the death penalty and to abolish the death penalty, and to ratify the second optional protocol to the ICCPR. Finally, we also reiterate our previous recommendation to Iran to ratify the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the Convention Against Torture, and its optional protocol. We wish the delegation of Iran a successful review meeting. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Ethiopia.
Thank you, Madam President. Ethiopia welcomes the delegation of Iran to the 20th session of the UPR working group. We thank the delegation for the national report and the oral updates. We commend Iran's cooperation with the UPR mechanisms and note Iran's commitment to promote and protect the rights of minority religious groups in the country, including participation in the political, social, and decision-making process. My delegation would like to recommend the following. 1. To further work on the human rights education to the public service and law enforcement bodies. 2. To continue improving women's empowerment programs in the country. Finally, my delegation expressed its best wishes to the delegation of Iran in their engagement with the Human Rights Council. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Finland.
Madam Vice President, Finland wishes to thank the Islamic Republic of Iran for the national report and its presentation today. We remain deeply concerned about Iran's frequent violations of fair trial guarantees provided for under international law and of Iran's recourse to the death penalty. We call on the Iranian authorities to refrain from using the death penalty. Finland deeply regrets that the Iranian judicial system did not allow a retrial of Ms. Reyhaneh Jabari's case. We are appalled by the execution of Ms. Jabari last Saturday. Finland wishes to make the following two recommendations on human rights defenders and violence against women. 1. That Iran effectively implement its international obligations to ensure the protection of human rights defenders and others exercising their right to freedom of opinion and expression, peaceful assembly, and association in compliance with international human rights law. 2. That Iran adopts legislation criminalizing domestic violence, including sexual violence, together with effective implementation measures. I thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to France.
France has welcomed the openness reflected in the statement of President Rouhani on human rights. We encourage all the Iranian authorities to implement them without delay in practice. France remains deeply concerned by the functioning of the judiciary and the application of the death penalty. We deplore the restrictions against the freedom of expression and the persistent violations against the rights of minorities. France would address the following recommendations to Iran. First, put an end to executions immediately and establish a moratorium with a view to the definitive abolishment of the death penalty, the abolition. Second, adopt reforms to guarantee the independence of the judiciary system and compliance with the rules of due process and a fair trial, particularly with respect to the right to legal counsel. Third, protect and promote freedom of expression and information on Internet against journalists, bloggers, and human rights defenders. Fourth, guarantee minimal conditions for detention. Fifth, put an end to discrimination and repression against persons on the basis of their ethnic or confessional background, especially Baha'is, Kurds, Awazis, and Christians. Sixth, guarantee the respect of the right of women, de facto and de jure, and fight against discrimination and violence against them.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Germany.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Germany welcomes the delegation of Iran to the UPR and would like to ask two questions. What measures does Iran take to prevent child early and forced marriage, including temporary marriage of girls? Which steps are planned with regard to the draft Citizens' Rights Charter launched in 2013? In addition, we would like to make 6 recommendations. 1. Take measures to ensure equal access of women to higher education and professional life, including by repealing restrictions on female students and by lifting bans on women in certain professions. 2. Ensure full respect for freedom of expression and opinion, including the freedom of the media, and guarantee unfettered access of all persons in Iran to domestic and foreign media information, both online and offline. 3. Announce a moratorium on the death penalty with a view to its eventual abolition. Pending this, take urgent steps to reduce its application in line with international minimum standards. 4. Immediately end all public executions. 5. Guarantee due process of law in all judicial proceedings. And finally, 6. Cooperate with all UN special procedures mandate holders who wish to visit Iran. Thank you very much, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, Ambassador, and I give the floor to Ghana.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Ghana welcomes a distinguished delegation from the Islamic Republic of Iran and commends them for their commitment to the UPR mechanism. Ghana notes the efforts made by the government of Iran regarding the protection of the rights of children by the appointment of a national focal point for the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the legislations on juvenile justice and child protection. We, however, recommend that Iran reconsider its reservation to the right to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We also acknowledge the gains made by Iran in reducing poverty, child and maternal mortality. The above commendations notwithstanding, Ghana shares the concerns raised by the Secretary General and the Human Rights Committee concerning the rights of women and girls. Ghana would like to make the following recommendations. That Iran ratifies the Convention Against Torture, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and the Convention Against the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Greece.
Greece would like to welcome the delegation of Iran and express appreciation for the country's efforts in implementing the recommendations of the first cycle. We note that since the first cycle there has been some positive changes in the normative and institutional framework related to the protection and promotion of human rights. This includes the drafting of Charter of Citizens' Rights, which is in the process of elaboration. We would like to request from the Iranian delegation more information on the main elements and philosophy of the Charter, and particularly any plans of its implementation in practice, including judicial remedies. Women's and girls' rights remain an area of concern. We recommend that Iran takes adequate measures such as the ratification of CEDAW to enhance the equal role of women in society, in particular in political, economic, social and cultural life, including sports. Freedom of expression and safety of journalism are also an area of concern. We recommend that Iran takes adequate steps to lift restrictions to the freedom of expression and adopt a framework for the protection of journalists and prosecution, intimidation and harassment. We would like to commend Iran for its commitment to the UPR process and wish the Iranian government every success.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Guatemala.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. Guatemala welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran. We thank them for taking part in this exercise and for the presentation of their report. Guatemala has a positive view of the promulgation of laws which help protect human rights in the country. Proof of this is the promulgation of the law to provide basic foodstuffs to the vulnerable sections of society. We also welcome the appointment of the Special Assistant to the President for ethnic groups and religious minorities and the establishment of a National Coordination Center on the Convention on the Rights of the Child. President, Guatemala shares the concern expressed by the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination for the fact that the definition of racial discrimination in the Constitution isn't pursuant to that of the Convention. Guatemala also respectfully recommends that the Islamic Republic of Iran continue to work to ensure Iranian women can transmit their nationality to their children, that cooperate with the Special Rapporteur on the human rights situation in the Islamic Republic of Iran, aiming to have better cooperation with the government and ratify the Convention Against Torture. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Hungary.
Let me thank the delegation of Iran for the country's national report and update under the UPR. Hungary deeply appreciates Iran's engagement in this process, but regrets that cooperation with other UN mechanisms is less forthcoming. We also note with concern that according to UN reports there has been no improvement in the situation of religious and ethnic minorities, and that torture and other forms of ill treatment are still frequently occurring in Iran. In view of this, we made the following recommendation to the government: to cooperate fully with UN experts and rapporteurs, including the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Iran, in line with the standing invitation issued by the government; to put a complete moratorium on the use of the death penalty and short of such a decision; to prohibit the death penalty for juvenile offenders and to abandon the practice of public executions; to take urgent legislative as well as practical steps beyond those cited in the national UPR report to protect the rights of religious and ethnic minorities, to ensure that those who commit torture are held accountable, and to ratify CAT and its optional protocol. Thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Iceland.
Thank you. Iceland welcomes the delegation of Iran to the UPR and respectfully makes the following recommendations. On gender equality, we recommend that Iran ratify CEDAW and repeal all laws that permit gender discrimination. On the treatment of LGBTI persons in Iran, including state policies that label it as an identity disorder, resulting in health problems, abuse, detention, sexual violence, and even executions, we recommend 1. To repeal laws criminalizing consensual sexual conduct between same-sex adults. 2. To revise legislative provisions that legalize abuse, persecution, sexual violence, and arrest of LGBTI persons. And 3. To outlaw forced or coerced sterilization, sex reassignment surgeries, and reparative therapies imposed without free and informed consent. On minorities, we recommend that Iran implement previous recommendations that guarantee the protection of the civil and political rights of all minority groups. And finally, on the prevalent use of the death penalty in Iran, including the world's highest number of child executions, we recommend that Iran outlaws the death penalty for persons convicted of crimes committed before the age of 18, without exception, and implement a moratorium on all executions. And I thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to India.
To Madam Vice President, India warmly welcomes the delegation of Iran and thanks it for its presentation today. We commend the progress made by Iran since its first UPR. Iran's legislative reforms, including the law on protection of children and adolescents without prenatal care, law on provision of parental care, law on provision of staples for vulnerable sections of society are notable. Equally praiseworthy are the establishment of new mechanisms to enhance protection for women, children, ethnic and religious minorities. We welcome Iran's cooperation with UN human rights mechanisms, particularly its invitation to the High Commissioner for Human Rights to visit the country. We recommend that Iran continue its cooperation with OHCHR and explore new avenues for human rights cooperation. We offer the following 3 additional recommendations for Iran's consideration. Continue to expand its health insurance coverage to all citizens, including through those in rural areas. Consolidate the progress made towards reaching MDGs and in the improvement of human development indicators. Develop training programs for the youth so as to improve their access to the labor market. We wish Iran the very best. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Indonesia welcomes and thanks the delegations of Iran for presenting UPR report. Indonesia appreciates Iran's commitments for bottom-up approach in its effort to promote and protect human rights in the country, including by establishing several new mechanisms. Notwithstanding with the efforts made, we believe further progress still can be pursued. In the spirit of constructive dialogue, we would like to offer some recommendations. First, continue efforts to strengthen legal framework, including by realizing its commitment to ratify CEDAW and CAT. Second, to continue strengthening institutional framework, including by finalizing the bill on NHRI in line with Vice Principles and National Strategic Action Plan on Human Rights. Third, continue to train law enforcement officials and to raise awareness on all human rights issues. Finally, we wish Iran all the best in its effort. I thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Iraq.
سيدتي نائب الرئيس يرحب وفد العراق برئيس وأعضاء وفد.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. We welcome the presence of the head of the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran on the occasion of the second UPR cycle. We welcome the coordination and the cooperation with the Office of the High Commissioner in order to follow up on the recommendations of the first cycle and in the preparation of this report. This reflects the developments since the first cycle through policies adopted, including in the area of development, health, and housing. We have taken note as well of the draft law aiming to promote the rights of citizens and the establishment of an office under the Vice President for women and family affairs. We also welcome the regulation promulgated by the Chief Judiciary to control the interventions of the police. We make the following recommendations: to strengthen cooperation with the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, improve access of citizens to housing. Thank you. I thank you, and I give the floor to Ireland.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Ireland is the delegation of Iran and thanks for its presentation. Ireland is gravely concerned with the situation of some religious minorities in Iran who suffer targeted attacks, arbitrary arrests, denial of access to higher education and the desecration of religious sites. Ireland recommends that Iran review its policies discriminating against students on account of their faith, ensure that the trials of members of religious minorities are conducted in a fair and transparent manner, and accord them the full rights of citizens of Iran. Ireland expresses dismay at recent executions in Iran, where the death penalty is applied extensively, including for juvenile offenders. Ireland recommends that Iran establish a moratorium on executions with a view to abolishing the death penalty and guarantee that no individual under the age of 18 at the time of their alleged crime is sentenced to death, in line with its obligations under the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you, and I give the floor to Israel.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I begin on a point of order. Following a statement made by the Iranian delegation, I ask you to remind the Iranian delegation to respect the name of our country, Israel. I thank you, Madam Vice President. I now begin our statement. Israel deplores the fact that in 2014 alone, Iran has executed more than 850 individuals. We urge and recommend the authorities to stop all executions. We are concerned that corporal punishment of children is lawful at home and used as a sentence of the court. We recommend Iran to explicitly prohibit all forms of corporal punishment of children and to revoke all laws that allow it. Israel regrets that Iran has failed to address violence against women and girls, which remains endemic. Israel recommends Iran exercises due diligence to prevent, deter, investigate and punish those accountable. We condemn the fact Iranian law promotes forced early and temporary marriages of girls as young as 9 and allows marriages between adoptive parents and their children. We recommend Iran abolishes and amends all laws that encourage and permit this practice. We also recommend the abolishment of all legislation resulting in discrimination, prosecution and punishment of people based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. I thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Italy.
Thank you. Italy thanks Iran for its commitment in participating in the UPR and welcomes its distinguished delegation. Appreciating the progress achieved so far towards the realization of human rights in various areas, Italy recommends Iran 1. To ban executions against juvenile offenders, while at the same time providing for alternative punishments in line with the new Iranian Penal Code. 2. To consider introducing a moratorium on the death penalty with a view to its abolition, in particular for drug-related offences and other crimes that cannot be labelled as most serious ones according to international standards. 3. To amend the Civil Code in order to bring to 18-year-olds the legal marriage age for both boys and girls and repeal the amendment to the law on the protection of children and adolescents with no guardian, which allows for marriage between adopted parents and an adopted child. 4. To enhance efforts to concretely recognize equal rights to all Iranian citizens, irrespective of their religious affiliation, including the right to promote their religion, to change religion, to conduct university studies, and to be hired as civil servants or members of the armed forces. 5. To engage in order to address any form of discrimination against LGBTI people, and in particular to prevent any practice which can harm their dignity, such as unnecessary sexual stunning and surgery, especially when carried out without duly informed consent. I thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Japan.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Japan welcomes the delegation of Iran and appreciates Iran's engagement with the UPR process. While we acknowledge many human rights challenges still remain in the country, we note with appreciation the expressed commitment of the current government to protect the rights of the people, measures taken to promote image participation in society, and a certain degree of openness conducive to the freedom of expression. We also welcome the positive engagement of Iran in the bilateral human rights dialogue between our countries. We would like to make 2 recommendations. Firstly, that Iran provide more information about the detention of journalists and individuals expressing dissenting views to address the concerns expressed by the Secretary General and the Special Rapporteur. Secondly, that it gives further account to its measures to ensure public access to the Internet as well as the progress being made thereon. I thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Kazakhstan welcomes His Excellency Dr. Mohammad Larijani and delegation of Iran to the UPR. We thank His Excellency for a comprehensive presentation. My delegation commends achievements of the government of Iran. The delegation of Kazakhstan notes with satisfaction the active steps towards enacting new laws concerning women's rights and the Islamic Penal Code. As a positive sign of implementing its international obligations, we note drafting of the bills on protection of the rights of the child and recently adopted laws and regulations. We welcome establishment of new mechanisms for women and family affairs, ethnic and religious minorities. Our delegation calls on Iran to further strengthen its international human rights commitments and adherence to the principle of cooperation and dialogue with the UN human rights mechanisms. In particular, we recommend, first, to continue its efforts to strengthen this framework for the protection and promotion of human rights. Second, to strengthen its cooperation with civil society organizations for the promotion and protection of human rights in the area of health services. Third, to continue to undertake measures to support and protect the rights of persons with disabilities. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Kuwait.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. We should like to welcome His Excellency Mr. Laranji, the Secretary of the High Council for Human Rights, and the accompanying delegation. We should also like to pay tribute to the role played by His Excellency the Ambassador of Iran. My delegation has studied with great care the report on human rights, which showed the intelligent consideration of human rights. Amongst the considerations are the rights of people with disabilities, and we welcome the measures taken by Iran in this respect after acceding to the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. Hence, we should like to recommend the following points. Firstly, to continue the adoption of special measures aimed at improving the quality of life of children with disabilities. Secondly, to continue awareness-raising campaigns about the rights of people with disabilities. And thirdly, to continue maintaining a good cooperation with UNHCR in favor of the refugees with disabilities. In conclusion, we wish our neighbor Iran every success in this review. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to the Lao People's Democratic Republic.
Madam Vice President, the Lao delegation warmly welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the 20th session of the UPR working groups, and would like to thank for a comprehensive national report for the second cycle of the UPR. My delegation takes note that Iran has implemented a recommendation accepted during its first UPR reviews and has introduced a number of rules, law and mechanisms which create enable conditions for ensuring the promotion and protection of human rights in the country. Laos PDR is pleased to note that Iran ranks among the world's 6 most successful countries in educational gender parity, and also one of the first countries to have either reached its MDG targets before 2015 or even faster. We recommend efforts taken by Iran in promoting women and children rights and healthcare services, eradicating poverty and protecting the rights of people with disabilities by reserving 3% of all government posts for the person with disability. In this regard, my delegation wishes to recommend the government of Iran to continue its cooperation with the UN and international organizations to overcome remaining constraints and challenges. I thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Latvia.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Latvia welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the second cycle of UPR. My delegation notes with concern the reports of special procedure mandate holders that, despite a standing invitation, no special procedure has been invited to visit the country since 2005. We therefore would like to recommend Iran to take necessary steps to implement the commitment extended to special procedures by accepting pending visit requests. In addition, we would like to make following recommendations to Islamic Republic of Iran. Consider a moratorium on the death penalty with a view to abolishing it, ensure equal treatment of women in law and practice in line with the relevant recommendations of the Human Rights Committee, ratify 4 international human rights conventions, in particular CAT and CEDAW conventions, and ratify the Rome Statute of International Criminal Court and fully align its national legislation with all obligations under the Rome Statute. I thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Lebanon.
Thank you, Madam. The delegation of Lebanon would like to welcome His Excellency Mr. Laranjani and his accompanying delegation. We should like to say that we welcome the effort deployed by Iran for the protection and promotion of economic, social and cultural rights in Iran. We should also like to pay tribute for the efforts in providing progress for the women's situation, fighting violence against women, as well as achieving development, providing housing and combating trafficking in drugs. We should like to recommend the following. Firstly, to intensify efforts for the enhancement of the cultural, social, and economic rights of women, children, and people with disabilities. Secondly, to pursue development and health policies that respond to the needs of the Iranian people. Thirdly, to strengthen and expand interreligious and intercultural dialogue. Fourthly, to continue its efforts in combating trafficking in drugs and fighting the scourge. In conclusion, we wish Iran every success in this review. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Lithuania.
Madam President, Lithuania welcomes the esteemed delegation of Iran and thanks for the informative national report. Noting commendable steps taken by the government, such as the release of high-profile political prisoners and the drafting of Citizens' Rights Charter, Lithuania remains concerned by the systematic violations of the rights to life, to freedoms of expression, association, assembly, belief and religion, and to non-discrimination. Lithuania would like to recommend to release all persons detained solely for peaceful political activities, to inquire all cases of alleged torture in detention facilities, and to bring those responsible to justice. To establish a moratorium on the use of the death penalty with a view to its abolition, and to commute all death sentences for persons under the age of 18. To end discrimination in law and practice against all religious and ethnic minorities, including Baha'i community. To revise Islamic penal code provisions that are discriminatory against women and girls, to take urgent legislative steps to specifically criminalize domestic violence, including marital rape. To cooperate with the Special Rapporteur and other UN Special Procedure mandate holders. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Luxembourg.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam President, Luxembourg thanks the Islamic Republic of Iran for presenting its national report. While welcoming the greater will of the Iranian authorities to cooperate with international human rights mechanisms, my delegation notes that major challenges remain in many fields related to human rights, particularly, firstly, the number of death sentences, including of juvenile moments of the offence, which has reached alarming proportions. Luxembourg recommends to Iran that it abolish the death penalty and, as a first step, put an end to executions of juveniles in keeping with its commitments under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Secondly, ethnic and religious minorities have in recent years seen a sharp increase in violations of their civil, economic, social and cultural rights. Luxembourg recommends that Iran put an end to repressive acts against ethnic and religious minorities, particularly the Baha'i, and take effective measures to bring to an end discriminatory policies against them. And finally, Luxembourg recommends to the government of Iran that it repeal all legislative provisions that give rise to discrimination based on declared or perceived sexual orientation and gender identity. Thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Malaysia.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Malaysia warmly welcomes the distinguished delegation of Iran and thanks them for their update on their human rights development and on the progress made on the implementation of the accepted recommendations received during its first review. In particular, we commend Iran for its tremendous efforts in enacting and amending various laws and legislation on human rights, as well as establishing new mechanisms to oversee issues relating to women's and children's rights. We laud Iran for the implementation of its fifth development plan that is aimed to promote and protect the rights of its people. In this regard, we welcome the achievements and progress that the government has made in the areas of education, health and social services. In 2010, Malaysia recommended Iran to explore the possibility of seeking accreditation of its High Council for Human Rights as Iran's NHRI. We once again encourage Iran to redouble its efforts to establish our NHRI in conformity with the Paris Principles. We would like to propose the following two recommendations. 1. To continue efforts for greater representation of women in the political process and their participation in public life, and 2. To continue its efforts to bridge the gaps in the field of education in the remote areas. I thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Mali.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Madam President, Mali welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran, led by His Excellency Dr. Larijani. and thanks for the presentation. My delegation welcomes the cooperation between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Human Rights Council. The delegation of Mali welcomes the efforts by the Iranian government to implement the recommendations accepted under the first cycle of the UPR. Mali has noted with interest the progress made in the economic and social spheres. This progress, we believe, is clearly the fruit of bold measures by the Iranian authorities in order to improve the living conditions of the population. My delegation would like to make the following recommendations. Firstly, continue the programs for economic and social development, overcoming the disparities between urban and rural areas, and secondly, strengthen the measures to combat violence against women. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Mauritania.
شكرا. نرحب بوفد الجمهورية الإسلامية.
The delegation of Mauritania should like to welcome the delegation of Iran and its accompanying delegation. We should like to commend their cooperation with all the mechanisms of the UN, particularly the UPR, and we should like to commend them for the improvements on the legislative procedures. We also welcome the reform on the penal code, which guarantees the independence of the judiciary and the work of human rights organizations. My delegation also pays tribute to the attention paid to Iranian women. Paragraph 12 of the National Plan Development guarantees the social and economic rights of women, as well as the establishment of a special instance for the rights of women. In conclusion, we hope that they will be able to establish an HRI in keeping with the Paris principles and enabling it to perform its duties optimally, and we wish Iran every success. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Montenegro.
Thank you, Madam President. Montenegro warmly welcomes His Excellency Secretary Mohammed Diabad and the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Montenegro takes a positive note of the number of legislative reforms the government has introduced between the two UPR cycles. We commend the government for taking additional measures to improve status of persons with disabilities, such as the mandating of 3% of all government posts for persons with disability and providing training courses for families with disabled children. We also welcome the decision of the government to join the optional protocol to the HRC on the sales of children, child prostitution and child pornography. However, we are deeply concerned that the provisions of the Iranian Civil Code allows marriage of girls at the age of 13, and that with the permission of the court, girls can be married at the age of 9. In addition, we remain concerned about the number of important UN conventions to which Iran is still not party to, including CEDAW. Montenegro would like to make the following recommendation to the government of Iran to establish an immediate moratorium on the use of the death penalty with the view of abolishing it. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Myanmar.
Madam President, my delegation warmly welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran. We thank them for their national report and comprehensive oral updates. We are pleased to note that Iran is one of the first countries that have reached MDGs ahead of the 2015 timeline. Madam President, my delegation would like to make the following recommendations for consideration by the delegation of Iran. 1. To continue implementing the programs which provide education, health, and social services in rural areas. 2. To continue implementing its national plans and programs to reach poverty eradication goals. We wish Iran every success in this review. And thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to the Netherlands.
Thank you, Madam President. The Netherlands would like to thank the delegation of Iran for the introduction of the National Report on the Human Rights Situation. The Netherlands welcomes the pledges made by the government and the President of Iran to improve human rights situation in the country. However,
Despite these announcements, considerable changes and improvement on the ground are lacking. The Netherlands firmly oppose the death penalty. The number of executions that took place this year in Iran is alarming and unacceptable. Some of these executions even include juvenile offenders. With a view to improving the human rights situation in Iran, the Netherlands recommends the government of Iran to guarantee freedom of speech and eliminating restrictions to free flow of information, including through the internet, and stop arrest, prosecution and sanctions of individuals for expressing views and opinions. Secondly, the Netherlands recommends the government of Iran to ensure that religious, ethnic and sexual minorities are able to exercise their rights and freedoms as guaranteed by the Iranian Constitution. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to the New Zealand.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. New Zealand welcomes the engagement by the Islamic Republic of Iran with this universal human rights mechanism and the willingness expressed to work together on issues of shared concern. In that vein, New Zealand encourages and recommends that Iran take all steps necessary to reform the discriminatory provisions of penal and civil laws against women. New Zealand also recommends that Iran continue to address measures that protect religious and ethnic minorities in the interests of ensuring their full and equal participation in public and private life. New Zealand further recommends that Iran fully comply with its binding international human rights obligations in light of Iran's commitment towards improving the overall human rights situation in the country. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Nicaragua.
Thank you very much, Vice President. Nicaragua welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we thank them for the presentation of their report. We recognize that progress has been made in domestic legislation because of significant changes to the Code of Criminal Procedure and the Criminal Code, which introduce new concepts and provide for better administration of justice. We also welcome the fact that Iran is one of the few countries which has met the Millennium Development Goals ahead of schedule, placing this on an equal footing with countries with a high Human Development Index. We recommend that efforts be continued to eradicate poverty through implementing instruments which are part of the national strategy. Nicaragua believes that the UPR is an appropriate mechanism within this Council to have a constructive, cooperative dialogue between countries, bearing in mind the political will shown by the states under review. Contrary to this, those politicized resolutions which focus on country situations, such as the case of Iran, are disproportionate and don't contribute to this dialogue. So my delegation approves that this Council does not promote this kind of resolution. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Niger.
Merci, Madame le Vice.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. On behalf of Niger, I would like to congratulate the delegation of Iran for the second review under the UPR. Niger welcomes the efforts by Iran in implementing the recommendations and ensuing from the first cycle. Iran has adopted new laws to amend the criminal code, the Islamic criminal code, and the law on criminal proceedings, and has adopted laws and produced mechanisms for the protection of the family, the promotion of equality in education, and provision of social services. My delegation also notes the actions by Iran in the field of economic, social and cultural rights under the Fifth Development Plan 2011-2015. We encourage Iran to pursue its efforts to promote and protect human rights and strengthen cooperation with the United Nations human rights mechanisms. We recommend ratifying the conventions to which Iran is not yet a consenting party, establishing a National Human Rights Commission in keeping with Paris principles. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Nigeria.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Nigeria warmly welcomes the delegation of Iran to the Human Rights Council and wishes to express our solidarity with them for their cooperation and determination to continue engagement with the UPR process and the OHCHR. We commend Iran on the adoption of the new criminal procedure law to facilitate demands for justice, in particular the steps being taken to ensure the release of prisoners of conscience. We also acknowledge the establishment of the National Convention on the Rights of the Child, as this will be significant in training, promoting and protecting child rights. while encouraging Iran to continue with its facilitation of the dispensation of human rights. We urge the government to 1. Extend the benefits of health insurance to all citizens. 2. Accelerate work towards the attainment of the MDGs for all Iranians, and to release all human rights defenders and lawyers currently serving lengthy terms. Finally, Madam Vice President, Nigeria wishes to encourage the Human Rights Council and Iran to continue to work harmoniously to resolve all areas of disagreement that may still exist. I thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Norway.
Norway welcomes the Islamic Republic of Iran's participation in the UPR process. Norway remains deeply concerned about the high number of executions carried out in Iran and recommends that Iran take immediate measures to abolish the death penalty for crimes committed by persons when they were under the age of 18. Norway furthermore recommends that a moratorium be placed on public executions. Norway remains concerned about the development of the freedom of expression and media in Iran and recommends that Iran fulfills its promises of a more open society through the implementation of the recommendations it endorsed in 2010. Norway is concerned about arrests and arbitrary detention of human rights defenders in Iran. We recommend that Iran ensure in law and practice that all citizens are given fair trials based on the rule of law as accepted in the 2010 UPR examination, and further recommend that Iran take the necessary steps to ensure that its citizens fully enjoy the rights and freedoms awarded to them by the Iranian constitution, with special emphasis on the right to freedom of expression, the right to political activity, and the right to assemble. And finally, a number of people belonging to religious minorities are still unlawfully persecuted. Norway recommends that Iran take measures to fully respect the freedom of religion and belief of its citizens. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Oman.
السيدة نائبة الرئيس، يسرني أن أرحب برئيسي
Islamic Republic of Iran, we welcome the efforts by Iran to cooperate fully with the UPR mechanism. Likewise, I welcome the efforts and the role played by His Excellency the Ambassador heading the delegation. Iran's report shows the efforts by the country to promote and protect human rights through a number of development plans, including the fifth plan. Iran is working to integrate the Millennium Development Goals into its development plans and broaden the medical and social coverage to all citizens, as well as combating poverty and illiteracy in keeping with the international instruments that Iran has joined. Madam Vice President, the report also shows Iran's efforts to improve the status of women. We therefore recommend to Iran, firstly, to pursue the training of women.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. My delegation would like to thank the delegation of Iran, led by Dr. Larijani, for the presentation of their second national report on UPR. We commend Iran for adopting the new Criminal Procedure Law 2014 and Law on Protection of Children and Adolescents without parental care or negligent parents. The passing of the Protection of Legal Freedoms and Citizens' Rights Act, establishment of a Commission on the Citizens' Rights of the Accused, reinforcement of legal and judicial departments, Healthy Mothers and Children's Nutrition Program, and Maskan-e-Meher Benevolent Housing Program are some of the admirable steps taken by Iran for implementation of its first UPR cycle recommendations. In conclusion, my delegation would like to recommend to Iran to continue efforts to improve and strengthen women's status in the society, to continue to pursue the adoption and implementation of administrative measures aimed at the promotion and protection of the rights of the child, to continue its efforts aimed at improving access to health services, and to further its policies regarding human rights education and training for law enforcement officials. I thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Paraguay.
Thank you very much, Vice President. Paraguay welcomes the report submitted, and we extend our cordial welcome to the distinguished delegation of Iran. Paraguay welcomes the signing of the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child on the participation of children in armed conflict. We would urge Iran to ratify other international human rights instruments too. We take note of the fifth development plan of the general health policy and the general population policy. However, we regret the fact that the Islamic Criminal Code doesn't bear in mind the observations made by special procedure mandate holders. We're particularly concerned that the Criminal Code keeps stoning as punishment and uses the death penalty as punishment for a broad range of offences. Promoting human rights for all and putting an end to violence and discrimination of women would be priorities. We trust that the government of Iran will work to eliminate in law and in practice all forms of discrimination against women. To conclude, Paraguay recommends that Iran eliminate stoning as a form of punishment, that it abolish the death penalty for those under 18, and that it cooperate with human rights protection mechanisms. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Peru.
Thank you very much, Vice President. The delegation of Peru wishes to thank the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran for its national report, and we recognize that they are willing to have an open discussion on the human rights situation in their country. Amongst the progress that we've been able to note, our attention is drawn to the establishment of new general policies to protect the rights of individuals. My delegation has received information that in the Islamic Republic of Iran there are religious minorities that are not recognized as such. This being so, we'd like to know what criteria are used to establish some groups as religious minorities and others as not being minorities. Peru respectfully recommends the following. First of all, that an open permanent invitation be extended to Human Rights Council special procedures. Secondly, that the country consider the ratification or accession to the Convention on the Rights on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women and the Convention on Migrants and Torture and Enforced Disappearances. That thirdly, religious minorities that exist in the Islamic Republic be recognized and that the human rights of their members be protected. That there be no punishment of women and children. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Poland.
Thank you, Madam President. Poland encourages Iran to engage further into meaningful dialogue with international human rights mechanisms in order to advance the human rights situation and respond to the concerns raised by the international community. We recommend to issue a standing invitation to the HRC special procedures. Poland is concerned with the high number of executions, including executions of minors, as well as cases of torture. We recommend introducing moratorium on death penalty with a view to abolish it. Additionally, we recommend Iran to ratify CAT. We are also concerned with reports of discrimination and harassment of people belonging to religious and ethnic minorities, political opponents or human rights activists, as well as unequal and discriminatory treatment of women. We recommend to ensure respect in law and in practice of the freedom of religion and belief, and we recommend to ratify CEDAW. We recommend to raise the minimum age of marriage to 18 years and ensure marriage with the legal requirements of free consent of spouses through amendments to the Civil Code and the Family Protection Law. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Portugal.
Thank you, Madam President. Portugal welcomes the delegation of Iran and thanks for the presentation of the report concerning the human rights situation in the country. Portugal welcomes the fact that since its previous review, Iran has maintained a standing invitation extended to the Council's special procedures. We regret nonetheless that the number of mandate holders have not been able to visit Iran as requested. Portugal recommends that Iran positively considers this request, in particular the request of the Special Rapporteur on the human rights situation in the country. Portugal welcomes the fact that since its first UPR, the Iran High Council for Human Rights is working on a bill to the establishment of a national human rights institution. We recommend Iran to promptly approve legislation establishing the HRI in full compliance with the Paris Principles. On gender equality, Portugal is concerned that laws that allow for discrimination against women continue to be introduced. We are also concerned about the lack of a specific
specific provisions in the Criminal Code about investigation, prosecution and punishment of perpetrators of domestic violence, and recommend that Iran considers introducing these amendments. Portugal is deeply concerned by the fact that revised Islamic Criminal Code continues to apply the capital punishment for a wide range of offences, including some that do not qualify as most serious crimes under international law. Portugal recommends that Iran commutes the sentence of persons sentenced to death and establishes a moratorium on executions for its first step towards the abolition of the death penalty. We also recommend that Iran ratify a second optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Qatar.
شكرا سيدة النائب الرئيس. في البدء نرحب بوفد.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I would like to welcome the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran and thank it for the presentation. The national report shows that Iran has taken serious measures to implement the recommendations accepted during the first UPR round. And in this context, I would like to welcome the adoption of a number of laws and mechanisms designed to promote human rights, to build capacities at a national level for this purpose. Moreover, human rights are now part and parcel of the school curriculum. Specialized awareness-raising units for human rights have also been established. We would have two recommendations. First of all, continue efforts to establish a national human rights institution in line with the Paris Principles. Secondly, pursue efforts to provide for women's empowerment and protect the rights of vulnerable groups. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Republic of Korea notes with appreciation that Iran has made a number of achievements in the human rights field. The Charter of Citizens' Rights has been drafted to lay the framework to strengthen guarantees for all basic and fundamental rights. There also have been legislative developments, including the amendment to the Penal Code and the adoption of the Criminal Procedure Law. In the hope that Iran will continue to build upon the current achievements, we would like to make the following recommendations. First, we recommend that Iran carry out constructive and cooperative engagement with the special procedures, including the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Iran. Second, we recommend that Iran put forward its best efforts to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women, including early forced marriage of girls and unequal rights to marriage, divorce, inheritance, and child custody. Third, we recommend the establishment of an independent national human rights institution in line with the Paris Principle and provided with adequate human and financial resources. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Romania.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Our delegation welcomes the participation of the Iranian delegation led by Dr. Larijani in the second UPR process. We took note of your updates on the legislative reforms as well as on the assessment of the Iranian authorities on the challenges and their initiatives to overcome the challenges. Against this background, our delegation will appreciate an update on the internal consultations on the Charter of Citizens' Rights. We appreciate the presentations of reports to the treaty bodies, and we hope that Iran will act upon their recommendations. Romania recommends to the Islamic Republic of Iran the following: to ensure all the procedural guarantees and the right to a fair trial for all persons indicted of committing a crime, including the right to defense and access to a lawyer, to cooperate with the special procedures of the Human Rights Council, including the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Iran, to ensure the freedom of religion and belief for all citizens of Iran. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you, and I give the floor to the Russian Federation.
Thank you. Madam President, we welcome the delegation of Iran and thank it for the report presented. We have noted a considerable improvement in the human rights situation since the first UPR cycle. We welcome steps to adopt a more humane criminal legislation as well as the adoption of a new criminal procedural code which guarantees the independence of the judiciary. We recommend that Iran continue to improve its legislation and the application of the law. Iran has adopted new important laws in the area of the protection of the children and youth, the protection of the institution of the family, and special institutions have been established for this purpose. We propose and recommend that Iran continue concrete measures to defend children and that the state provide support for the protection of the institution of the family. We note the national program to fight violence against women and to propose and recommend that Iran continue working towards this. We also propose that work continue to reintegrate former detainees into society and that conditions of detention be improved. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Senegal.
Merci. Thank you. Madam President, Senegal wishes to welcome the delegation of Iran and congratulates it on the quality of the report presented. This report shows clearly that significant progress has been made by Iran since 2010 in the political, legal and legislative areas, which led to the democratic election of June 2013 and to the adoption of new criminal laws and the implementation of the criminal law on the administrative justice. Progress is also noted in the promotion of the rights of the child and the strengthening of the role of women, thereby consolidating the fundamental freedoms of the Iranian people. The delegation of Senegal welcomes the vigorous implementation of recommendations made during the first UPR cycle and would like to make the following recommendations. Reinforce and strengthen the freedom of expression, especially of the press. Continue to protect vulnerable groups, especially women. Promote increased cooperation with the international community. To conclude, Senegal wishes the best of success to Iran in the implementation of the recommendations of the second UPR cycle. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Sierra Leone.
Vice President, Sierra Leone welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran and thanks them for the presentation of the national report. My delegation commends Iran for its 5-year development plan in line with the MDGs and which provides health and education to all its citizens. It has also provided affordable housing for low-income families living in less developed provinces. Other achievements include actions taken for the protection of women and the family and the passing of new laws. However, Sierra Leone believes that Iran should further advance human rights and fundamental freedoms and would therefore encourage Iran to abolish the death penalty and commute death penalties for juveniles. Recommendations: consider ratifying CEDAW, CAT, ICRMW, ICCPR up 2 and CPED. 2. Eliminate reported discrimination against religious minorities such as the Baha'is and offer better legal protection to such communities. 3. Pass legislation to raise the legal age of marriage to 18 and to eliminate the practice of forced and temporary marriages. 4. Expedite the creation of a national human rights institution in line with the Paris Principles. Sierra Leone wishes Iran every success in this UPR process. Thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Singapore.
Thank you. Singapore welcomes the delegation of Iran to the UPR process and expressed appreciation for the national report, which detailed Iran's implementation of the accepted recommendations from the last review. We note that since its last review, Iran has signed the CRC optional protocol on the involvement of children in armed conflicts. This is in addition to the number of core human rights instruments which it had already ratified. Over the last few years, it has also passed several domestic laws to strengthen its legislative framework on human rights. Singapore recommends that Iran continues to strengthen its domestic legal framework and implements its international human rights obligations. At the same time, we also know the challenges which Iran faces in development and in improving the well-being of its people. We hope that Iran will continue to engage the international community to overcome these challenges. In this regard, we recommend that Iran continues the international cooperation and dialogue with the aim to improve the socio-economic circumstances of its people. We join the many friends of Iran in wishing it success. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Slovakia.
Madam Vice President, Slovakia thanks the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran for the presentation of the national report underlining main human rights achievements since the first UPR cycle. We commend the government for launching the drafting process of the Charter of Citizens' Rights and encourage national authorities to make this process widely inclusive. Despite efforts, further progress is needed to comply with international human rights standards in several thematic areas, such as women's rights, freedom of media and access to information, including access to Internet. We share concerns expressed by the Human Rights Committee and Committee on the Economic, Social and Cultural Rights about the discrimination against members of religious communities, in particular the adherents of the Baha'i State. Slovakia would like to make two recommendations to the government of Iran. First, abolish stoning as a form of capital punishment and consider abolishing apostasy as a capital offense. Second, take all appropriate measures to end discrimination and intimidation against persons belonging to ethnic and religious minorities. Thank you.
I thank you, and I give the floor to Slovenia.
I thank you, Madam Vice President. Slovenia thanks the distinguished delegation of Iran for presentation of the report, where we welcome the government intention to establish a national human rights institution and national strategic action plan on human rights, as well as its effort to appoint women on senior level government positions and to introduce President's Special Assistant for ethnic groups and religious minorities. We have the following recommendations to the government of Iran. To extend a standing invitation to all special procedures, and particularly to allow the entry of the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Iran. To abolish the continued use of death penalty, stoning and retribution for murder. We further recommend to Iran to ratify and align its national legislation with the Rome Statute. And finally, to abolish the discriminatory practice of forced and early marriage, high dropout rates in schools and restriction to university education for girls, and to promote active participation of women in the society. I thank you.
I thank you, Excellency, and I give the floor to Uzbekistan.
We warmly welcome the distinguished delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran at the second cycle of the UPR, and thank for the presentation of the national report. My delegation commends the adoption by Iran of new legislative and institutional measures to reform the criminal procedure system, strengthen mechanisms to protect the rights of children, women, minorities, as well as the ongoing process to adopt a Charter of Citizens' Rights. We also note achievements of Iran in ensuring gender equality in education. Uzbekistan makes the following recommendations to Iran. 1. Increase efforts to further develop human rights education. 2. Continue to take measures to strengthen mechanisms for protection of the rights of women and children. 3. Promote the rights of persons with disabilities to ensure their social integration. 4. Continue to cooperate with the UN human rights mechanisms within the framework of implementation of the ratified international instruments. Thank you for the attention.
I thank you. The last speaker on my list is Mexico. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. Mexico welcomes the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we thank them for the presentation of their report. We commend the President's commitment to adopt a Charter of Civil Rights, and we also commend the bill which grants Iranian mothers' children permanent residency. Just like Mexico, we very much hope that this bill will soon be adopted. We also welcome the establishment of the Vice Presidency for Women's and Family Affairs and the appointment of women to high levels of administration. In order to shore up the progress made, Mexico recommends that measures to prevent discrimination and incitement to hatred against Baha'i and any other ethnic and religious minorities be adopted, whether they've been recognized officially or not. Secondly, to ensure due process and fair trials, particularly any trials that might lead to the use of the death penalty. Thirdly, that you strengthen your capacity to welcome and provide services to asylum seekers, and that in conjunction with other stakeholders. Thank you.
I thank you, Excellency. I now give the floor to His Excellency Dr. Mohammad Javad Ardeshir Larijani for his final remarks. You have the floor, sir.
Madam Vice President, first of all, I should congratulate you and thank you very much for your commanding and prudent leadership of this August meeting. And I would like to thank all the honorable delegations who contributed in giving their views and recommendations, even if may not agree with the presumptions of their recommendations, or there may be some fallacies and mistakes in references in their recommendations, but we really appreciate those indulgence in this debate. While I do not have enough time to go into detail on answering at least most of these issues or giving our views, but let me just converge on the issue of minority and especially the Baha'is. There were pretty much reference on that mostly from our colleagues from the European countries. No, Baha'is are a minority in Iran. As has been asked, they are dealt under so-called the citizenship contract. So under this citizenship contract, they enjoy all the privileges of any citizen in Iran. They are very much affluent people. They have plenty of factories, firms, and economically they are very active. They have professors at university. They have students at university. So they enjoy all the possibilities and privileges. Here I would like to bring an issue as a very humble request. For 35 years I'm teaching mathematics at universities, and recently a number of European countries are expelling our students, terminating their education in very broad areas under this unwarranted accusation that they may be used for the promotion of nuclear technology. And so first of all, in nuclear technology and science we are strong enough. We don't need the help from the others, but these broad areas of science doesn't make sense that to be related. For example, a girl has been expelled recently because she was studying in biophysics. So it is very strange, at least for me, a professional, that how it is related to nuclear technology. I want to ask, my mind is perplexed. I'm very happy that a minority in Iran are so much under the interest of other countries, their well-being. This is good for us. We are very proud to see that our people are of so genuine interest. But I'm perplexed at why the whole nation of Iran is deprived and is under this unjustified sanction or unjustified prejudice. Why you are so interested in the well-being of Baha'is, which is very good. They are our citizens. We really acknowledge that, and we are very much commending that. But you should not deprive and put such a discrimination on the whole nation of Iran. Please resolve this paradox for me and for the others as well. Well, let me say that there is no forced marriage in Iran legally. If it is illegal, we will confront that by law. The age of marriage in Iran is right now generally about 25 to 30. So our girls are getting interested in marriage a bit late in their age, which is very bad. My recommendation to my daughters are get married at least around 20 years old. So anyhow, well, let me leave these things to the detailed answers that we will present to you. Madam President, I want to emphasize that UPR right now is the unique mechanism of the United Nations for Human Rights, which all countries are on equal footing. This is the reason that we attach so much importance to that. This is the reason that we spend enough time on it. This is the reason that we want to engage and participate to enrich that. It should be safeguarded, Madam President. There are ways to weaken that process. For example, those countries who may be refraining from giving report, or more than that, to create parallel process using other mechanism in UN to undermine or to weaken this noble process. We are engaged. Our policy in human rights is full engagement, participation, being very abstract and open in presenting our views. We are very much open to listen as well, but we do not accept imposing a special lifestyle under the banner or umbrella of human rights. Please don't make misuse of that. I mean, universality should be promoted by a kind of multicultural mechanism. If you impose a special way of life and take away others the possibility of people of the world to participate in the honest-to-God process of civilization, definitely will be weakened. That we are different is an asset. That we are different, that we have different experience for life, it is an asset. It is enriching our experience. It is enriching our way of life. It is enriching the human rights as well. Iran has plenty of things to say and plenty of things to learn. And this is the wish, that the way that we look to UPR, and I hope that this impartiality will definitely continue. Thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank His Excellency and the delegation for the presentation and participation in this review. The report of the review will now be prepared by the members of the Troika, namely the representatives of the Philippines, Romania, and Argentina. The report is scheduled to be distributed on Tuesday, 4th November at 12:30 and adopted later that afternoon. We will reconvene this afternoon at 3 p.m. for the adoption of